Hit.
Hip hip.
Ha.
Chua.
Kya. Okay. We are good.
We're good.
What does Ike say when he uses his fire blast? There you go. That was nice and clean audio right there.
Are you sure it wasn't super distorted and gritty?
No, it actually looks like the blue burst that comes from in Smash Bros. Just a big old
Oh, perfect.
audio.
Like very long, extended. You've held it for too long, kind of thing.
No, you're good. But yeah. Hello. My name is Chris.
And I'm Frank.
All right, you're going with Frank? Let's go with Frank.
Yeah, we're going with Frank.
All right. We all have code names here. I remember the first podcast I told my brother, it's like we should use code names.
Yeah.
And
the Blue Falcon won't be home for another 3.5 hours.
There you go.
So, yeah.
The Falcon has left the nest.
Yeah. She does so every Monday and Tuesday.
All right. So we're here to talk about Fire Emblem and
Yes.
our thoughts on specifically 3 houses. Hooray. Here we go. An accumulation of what would normally be for a person perhaps 150 hours.
200 if you play through all the content 3 times.
200 if you play through all the content 3 times.
Yeah.
That is a lot of game to go through.
Yeah. I have a couple completionist friends who are definitely on that track. And so if each play route is actually about 80 hours each, then you'll end up with closer to 240 hours of content through the main 3 routes. And that's before the 4th DLC pack comes out in a few weeks.
Okay. So does that mean you're closing in on that number or?
Not quite. I burnt out a little bit after the first route, so I've played about halfway through the other 2. But, well, there's technically 4 routes that you can choose from, but the 3 houses that you can pick to play from, I've played through 1 completely, and then I didn't take the route split for the other direction on that, and then the other 2 houses I've played about halfway through.
Which house was that?
I played through the Black Eagles the entire way through, and that is with me picking Edelgard's side over the church. And
why'd you choose Edelgard?
I chose Edelgard because when the game was first announced, she was the first lord that I saw, and I kind of made a note to well, not really a note, but I kind of established within myself that, like, this was my main character. This is the character that I'm going to play the game through with on the first try. And so, through better or worse, that is what I chose to do. It was an experience, but I really, really liked 3 Houses just as a game overall. So even if there were story aspects that made me question my choices.
You're looking at me and I'm looking at you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying really hard not to spoil too much before we really dig into this, but to keep it succinct.
I just finished Black Eagles today, but I watched the movie. I didn't play through it.
Oh yeah.
I played through Golden Deer, but yeah. So when you chose Edelgard, it was just because she was the first one you saw?
She was the first lord I saw.
Not because she had like a step on me attitude?
No. Although I do appreciate that she really had like an unapologetic attitude about herself and about how the way she acted and the way
unabashed confidence.
Exactly, the way that she conducted herself throughout the story.
Yeah.
And it was very representative of spoiler alert that she's royalty kind of thing.
I think we can all safely say that everyone who is a main leader of the house is a royal to some degree,
or
in the Nation of
inheritor
Portland.
of some sorts. Yeah.
Or to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most interesting thing about this Fire Emblem. I'm going to get right into it with the lore-wise, is the world building.
Oh, absolutely.
And how the first thing you do is you get introduced as you're a mercenary. Okay.
We've had that start before. Yeah, we've had that start before.
Well, that was Ike's story?
Yeah, Ike's story
Yeah.
from Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn. Yeah.
But we don't have amnesia.
In a way.
We aren't the awakened chosen ones. And we aren't like like when we come in, we make a name for ourselves, but it doesn't start that way. You've spent but your character Byleth has essentially spent the majority of their life doing job to job, kind of seeing the world.
Well, it's interesting because, and I mean, I wouldn't consider this to be spoiler territory, just mainly because it's the first 10 minutes of the game.
Should clarify, when we say spoilers, we're not going to talk anything beyond the first appearance of what's known as the Death Knight.
Yes, and after that point, we'll dig into the other stuff later.
There will be a big warning.
Yeah, we'll be sure to disclaimer that we're talking about spoilers when we're talking about spoilers, anything past the first appearance of the Death Knight. But I wouldn't consider this a spoiler though, because it's the first. It's really not even the first chapter of the game. You have your father, Geralt. He's the famous
Geralt.
Geralt.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I don't
I'm
even.
talking about The Witcher.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, you know what? If I pronounce something weird, so sue me. Like,
No, you were correct. It was Geralt.
yeah, I have a habit of doing that
Is it a
sometimes.
GIF or a GIF?
We're not getting into this debate. This is Fire Emblem, damn it. But so, anyways, it's not really much of a spoiler because it's all within that first prologue area. You establish you're not the one with amnesia. Sothis is. You're not the famous mercenary. Your father is. So they're taking these tropes that they've used before in previous games, but they're not giving it to your self-insert, which is what they've done before to make the game more convenient.
It's not your... can you describe yourself for me when you do the protagonist test? And it's like big hair and all that.
I do appreciate that when they give you a self-insert, it's more of a what you see is what you get kind of thing, as opposed to a, and what do you look like? And then they take you to your little avatar loading screen where you pick one of 20 different hairstyles.
I think that is only okay in Awakening simply because of Awakening's premise, which is... I can't say, but you know what I mean? Like, the main character can literally be anyone, whereas Byleth has to kind of be tied to Geralt. Like, they need that kind of upbringing.
Yeah. And Byleth isn't necessarily an amnesiac, like I was saying, but
literally
she is
clean slate.
Yeah, he or she, whichever gender you choose, is very sheltered, and so it's very natural for you to learn about the world that they're building through Byleth's eyes, because Byleth really hasn't experienced a lot of that coming into the game. Like, right. I'm pretty sure that at a certain point in those first few chapters, it's established that Byleth really doesn't necessarily know how old they are.
Yeah, precisely.
So it's one of those things where you get to experience the world through someone that hasn't really, even as a mercenary who's traveled with their father for the last however many years, experienced the world, you know?
Well, it acts as a sort of it acts as a character to view the world through their eyes, as well as they are the vehicle for our experience. Basically, they know nothing about the land, therefore we're able to experience it at the same pace they do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, hold on.
1 second.
Okay, hey Reggie, we're gonna take this. Move it over there. Go get it. Can you go get it? No?
I don't understand.
There we go. Stay in your bed, okay? Wait for it. Okay, can you go to your crate? Keep going. Go to your crate. Go to your crate. You can take the bone. Here.
Hopefully it won't be right behind me and pick up on it. Should be okay. That's fine. That'll work.
Yeah.
She's over there.
Alternatively, I can take away the bone and give her a different
she's
toy.
back in her bed, so that's okay.
Okay, yeah, stay in your bed. That's a good girl.
All right, we're back into it.
So, yeah, we're back to it. Where were we?
So Byleth is basically a vehicle to act for the character, because in every Fire Emblem, it's a brand new world, right? They're not necessarily all interlinked. I don't think there's actually a direct sequel in any of the Fire Emblems.
I don't think so either. Direct sequel. Hold on. Direct sequel meaning like how Fire Emblem 3 is a
there's
sequel
part 1,
to
part 2, but there's no Fuldulin is not the same place that as was in Awakening.
That is true. There's no direct correspondence to that. Hold on again. Okay, we're going to take away the bone. Here, you take this one. We're recording. You can't chew on the bone like that.
Please, Dad, no.
Nope, I'm sorry. We gotta do this. We're all done. I'll be back over in just a second. We're just gonna put this up here. It's just a little too noisy, Reggie. I did it so you wouldn't jump all over Christian. I'm sorry. Okay. Let's try.
Hopefully she doesn't throw a tantrum.
No, it's fine. Let's just do that little bit again.
Okay.
So
we're kind of treating Byleth is basically the vehicle for the player to experience the same as Byleth. So Byleth is being introduced into the world of Folden at the same pace the player is, being sheltered and such. But I mean, like, because you don't need any prior knowledge to any of the other Fire Emblem games.
Yeah.
The worlds are all separate.
It's good you're getting this world building because there are no other stories that take place in the land of Fodlan.
Yes.
So it's good to have that knowledge that you're gaining through Byleth's eyes.
But even then, when I remember back in Awakening, there was not much of a world to build on. It was basically fantasy kingdom that is under siege, and here is a kingdom that Crom is from, and here is the history of the Branded and what they do, and the Shepherds and what they do, and that was it. What happens across the sea? I don't know. Who chooses the king? I don't know. Why are they at war with this place? How long has it been around?
Oh, yeah. And, well, it's largely speculated. I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed at this point, too, that the world of Awakening is actually where Marth and his story come from, but like 1,000 years into the future kind of thing.
Considering the term Marth is a reference everyone knows.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whether it's Smash Brothers, which kind of more or less brought Fire Emblem onto the global stage, and just in general, like, he's the namesake of Fire Emblem in and of itself, just because he's from the titular game #1. So the Fire Emblem, the very first Fire Emblem. Sorry, that was a weird way to go about saying that.
So Fire Emblem, which was the original, which was on GBA.
Oh no, this is well before the GBA.
This is like SNES.
I think so. I am not confident that it was the SNES, but
it's old though.
Yes.
Okay. So it's been around for a while.
That's why they made 6 more before the 7th came to the US.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very familiar with the whole series. But that actually probably brings up another good talking point. What is your experience with the Fire Emblem series?
Awakening, half of Conquest and half of Birthright.
Half of Conquest, half of Birthright sounds about right.
I have a problem with Conquest personally and philosophically as a game designer. Yeah.
Well, why is
and writing wise? Well, it is mainly because I originally wanted to play the Kingdom of Nor. Because I was like, yeah, evil. How are they going to justify their actions? How are we going to ask these questions in a wartime and really kind of like move forward? Because I was like wondering, like, is it going to give us a choice to be good at some point or kind of do a 180? Or how do you come back from being the evil side of battle?
I mean, it's not very original to just shit on Fates, but you came in with too high of expectations.
I came into because my first expectation was Awakening. I'm like, wow, this is kind of what the world is. It's kind of a very operatic story of war, very cut and dry, good and evil, but it's done in such a way where war isn't romanticized. It is very clearly, no, people are being emulated. Like, they are catching fire and burning to their death on a battlefield, but they don't show it, but it is like, my God, they killed all of our men. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, they don't glorify it at all. They kind of cut it down to the bare bones, like, yeah, war is death.
Yeah,
like there's
but
a lot of it.
Ideology is kind of like the key driving force to every character.
Yeah,
but because of that, it was like you have Crom. I want to do good, right?
Well, yeah,
and then you have I've only experiences with Awakening as far as character. He's like, I want to be in a world where people can be at peace and we don't have to kill each other. Essentially, he wanted a land where everyone helped each other. And that's what he strove for. But then you kind of introduce everyone else who follows under him. It's like, oh, I got my own thing going on, but I kind of like what his ideal's doing.
Yeah.
So I'll follow him. So then that was all good. It was a very good game, and it's one of my favorite on the 3DSs. But then you get to Conquest, and it's like, okay, this is the next step. What do we get? And it's like, well, for example, can I just give an example?
Oh, absolutely.
Halfway through one of the games, you are conquering territory and territory. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. This is how a evil power gains financing, support, and backing to finally make a global conquest. But at one point, you start making your way towards the enemy kingdom, the other main characters, the Hushidos. Is that what their name is? Or is that the one guy?
The Hoshidans, yeah.
Yes. And you end up just winning the battle. You turn around for 2 seconds, turn back, and your dad has basically crucified everyone. And I'm like,
yeah.
Wow, that escalated so quickly.
Yeah, no, it's Garen's an awful human being.
But then the question then becomes like, how could they have done this? And everyone's like, oh, this is awful. And then your character Corin is like, should we do something about it? And they're like, what can we do? And they just like shrug, and I'm like,
there's a lot you can do.
Yeah, I'm like,
it's just that your writers didn't take the opportunity to explore any of those possibilities.
Did not take the time to explore it, what anyone felt. And that's what Three Houses did really well. Everyone had a different opinion in that first battle.
Exactly. In the first, well, you get the idea and the vibe from all three of the what you would call main lords, because the Avatar doesn't count as a main lord.
Who are the three main lords, by the way?
We've got Edelgard, the leader of the Black Eagles. We've got Dimitri, the leader of the Blue Lions. And then we've got Claude, the leader of the Golden Deer.
Demas, though.
Deer Gang.
Yes. But yes, as you were saying, they each represent a different ideology of perhaps a war campaign.
Well, in a way, yeah, because...
Or at least how they see the world. I think we're going to wait for that part, but like kind of like you see Edelgard, like you said, had major confidence. Dimitri, who is all about the law and justice, and then Claude, which is all about kind of, I would almost say personal gain when you first meet him.
Well, when you first meet him, yeah, but they really kind of take on a path of their own that really kind of evolves from there. Three Houses obviously is not my first Fire Emblem game. I started back in Fire Emblem 7 when it first came to the US. I hadn't had the opportunity to have any exposure to Fire Emblem before that point. But I remember my parents actually got Fire Emblem 7, which in America was just Fire Emblem.
Yes, because America is weird when it comes to localizing games.
A little bit, but it was actually given to my brother. And he was finicky about letting me play his games, but I essentially borrowed it, and I'm using air quotes here because I I borrowed it, and I just didn't ever give it back, so it belonged to me now. But I was infatuated with the game, and I've been playing every single Fire Emblem game as it's come out ever since.
So when you say you played Fates and all those, you have a preference towards the older.
I was exposed to the older games prior to Fates coming out, so I also had too high of expectations when Fates came out. I feel that they in the general picture of what they were trying to do with the game, I think they did an amazing job. But I feel that when they came to the actual execution, they flopped. And I feel that Three Houses is almost their chance of retribution on what Fates could have been.
I think so, too.
They spent a lot of time and a lot of money on their map design for Conquest, and they kind of failed to allocate whatever other money that they put into this game anywhere else in the game.
They were trying to basically nail down an aspect that really made Fire Emblem Fire Emblem.
Well, yeah,
and everything else was I would imagine the social aspect of it was something they like, but was not something they put as much into, as you said, like the maps.
Yeah, because the social aspect is
this is the most expansive social aspect they had, but it is one of those things where it's like
Yeah,
It's better than Lisa in Awakening just putting frogs in people's pockets.
Lissa, oh my gosh. But Lissa, like, it was cute and endearing. And the thing is they took something they had that was original, well explained, with an alternate timeline sort of thing in Awakening, and they tried to replicate it with these, like,
Fates was too much like
Yeah.
Awakening. That was the big fault.
They tried to follow in their own footsteps too hard while also trying to be creative and innovative and original. And
skinship.
We're not going to talk
Okay.
about the skinship. We're not going to talk about the skinship because that was just too much.
You can't deny that's now become an element of Awakening's identity in American audiences.
Well,
like
Awakening, but Fire Emblem.
You have
of.
Fire Emblem original in your mind. Everyone who got the 3DS, that was probably a lot of those people was their first time playing it.
Well, see, here's the thing. So one of the complaints that I've heard, if we're going to talk about supports, and this is without giving away any big details further on into the game, but a big complaint that I've heard about Three Houses is that the support system is very repetitive in certain instances. So, for instance, Bernadetta is a character that I've heard a lot of complaints about because all of her C supports start the exact same. The issue is...
I'm scared.
I'm scared of you. You're a stranger. I don't like talking to strangers. I don't like talking to men, whatever. You know, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But the thing is in like Fire Emblem 7, for instance, you got 5 support conversations for a character for the entire game.
Oof.
So if you wanted to get all of the support conversations unlocked for a particular character, you had to play the game through a bunch of times. So, Ellawood or Hector or Lynn, for instance, they're familiar names to certain people because they're from that game and they're the lords.
Lynn is the top tier one.
Yeah, from what I've heard. But they had supports with I think 7 or 8 different characters, and you know nowadays most of the characters have supports with like 7 or 8 different characters, but there's no support cap, and so if Bernadetta's only getting 5 supports per game, she's only having to go through those C supports where everyone's like grinding their teeth and pulling out their hair once or twice per game. So she's actually showing that character development. She doesn't have an opportunity to dip back into the C pool and really like repeat, hey, did you forget that I have social anxieties?
Oh, okay.
So it's one of those things where they've tried to
dip back into the seas.
They've done something for the players in that they allow you to witness all the supports all at once for a character if you put in the time to put them on the battlefield with all their support partners.
I did do that. I also fed them a lot.
Yeah. And
have you seen the one with Big Boy Blythe?
Big Boy Blythe.
Blythe is just this basically orb.
Yeah.
Just because they're like, man, I really like talking with these people, but I only do it around when I'm eating lunch. And then Blythe's like, And then the next time you see them, they're just like really playing. It's like everyone else is social, and they're like sitting as a big lord over them, and everyone's like doing social links, and he's just like, perfect. Like some sort of godfather.
The pieces are falling into order.
But
yeah, they put a lot into making sure you could get everyone's story, because a lot of the story for each character is hidden in those supports. I guess I would have to say the other ones were very light, like, oh, this is what this character's personality would do in this time. Like, they would do gardening and all this stuff. But in Fire Emblem, you get in Three Houses, you get the right people together, and it's like, my dad tried to marry me off. Stories.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of it's strange that they really all the characters in the actual story progression kind of all pile in all at once during these scenes where they all get to kind of give a one-liner about how they feel about the particular mission at hand or something.
Yeah.
And the best opportunity you have to flesh out these characters is through their support conversations. But I mean, if you compare that, though, to these older games, though, where you only get 5 support conversations.
How were those conversations exactly?
Those conversations, some characters didn't really get a whole lot through certain supports, so you kind of had to pick and choose which supports were really going to be revealing about that character. So only certain support partners were going to reveal certain aspects about these characters. But in general, with story involvement, they would be very involved in the chapter that they came in with regards to the main story. And then once that chapter was up, they disappeared from the story because they were no longer plot relevant, you could say. So they were killable. And
Gotcha.
it's the same thing that happened in Fates with those characters. Once they joined your party and they were expendable, there was the opportunity for them to just drop out of the main dialogue.
Yeah, well, that was something I noticed. I played on normal casual because I am casual, but
Casual scum.
I noticed that everyone had a word to say in Edgewise before a big mission, and I imagine that pool would be a lot smaller if permadeath was on.
Well, that's another thing about Three Houses is that they built the game around the idea that these are the characters you get. So make sure they survive. They even gave you a function to where if you killed a character by accident, you didn't have to restart the chapter. You could just rewind to the point before you messed up, and you could try and do it a little differently.
Yeah, that's the big mechanic draw point they were doing for this game was you have the ability to rewind time for a couple turns or a lot of turns if you'd like, a certain amount of times during
You could
combat.
get to the end of the map, and you could possibly rewind back to the beginning of the map. I haven't confirmed that myself because I've never really wanted to do that, but I've been able to rewind through about 3 or 4 turns before because I just really felt like I need to get the map with fresh eyes now that I know certain things that are coming at me.
It's a nice tool to have, especially for Fire Emblem's mean tactic of fog of war, enemies coming in from the east. I had no warning of this or any concept that this was a possibility. Oh no!
So if
Bernie, no.
if you played maddening mode,
Yeah.
if you played maddening mode, you'll know that chapter 2, well. Yeah, chapter 1 is with the bandits in the Red Canyon.
Chapter 1, you meet the lords. Chapter 2, you go after the bandits.
Yeah, chapter 1 I guess is like a prologue, whatever.
Can we talk about the monastery real quick?
Okay, let's talk about the monastery.
Okay, so in the world, you find the lords, you rescue them as mercenaries, and they say, "Why don't you come back to the monastery?" And Geralt's like, "Oh boy."
Yeah,
and you get there, and we meet the person that I have the feels for. Not the good feels. The I don't trust anime moms.
Oh, so you're talking about Rhea.
Do you remember when so 6 months ago when this game first came out, do you remember what I told you? I'm like, there's one thing about this game I don't like, and it's that lady in all white.
And it's Mommy Bishop Lady.
And it's Mommy Bishop Lady, and she's the first person you meet. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Because I have such a distrust for really serene looking characters.
Did you get the opportunity to watch the cutscene though? Like that first cutscene where you walk into the monastery,
she's
and
standing
she's
in the
just
light, and
standing
she's
in the light
angelic.
all the way up on her ledge.
Yeah, and she's sitting in a very big. She's in a very big stadium, and she's got a very radiant light coming down.
Yeah, it's supposed to give you this angelic aura, but it feels foreboding. It's not that she's up above you like some radiant angel. She's like a puppet master. She knows she knows something that you don't, and it's gonna essentially be your mission to figure out what's going on.
Right. I do like the intrigue of this game. That is fascinating, that whole aspect. But
I mean, some of the surprises were less surprising than maybe they were hoping for. But
when they do the big reveal, it's a reveal for 5 minutes, and the next thing happens. And
yeah, but
never really.
I definitely think that the monastery in and of itself has its flaws. They do kind of take the religious aspect of the game and they make it very imperialistic. So they make it very militaristic.
Isn't that a lot of religion in Fire Emblem period?
In a way, but
Echoes, wasn't it a big aspect of Echoes plotline?
Absolutely.
There was a whole northern religion state, and it was only as powerful as it was because it was religion.
Fire Emblem really likes to dabble with the idea of what if the church had an army?
I think a lot of Japanese culture likes to explore that concept.
Well, see, but that's the thing, though. Rhea didn't necessarily have an army. She had a faction that was independent of the country itself. The country was run through the religion and through the grace of
There's no
Saros.
church and state. There is church
there's a church state.
Overstate.
Yeah, church overstate. And through the grace of Saros, the other countries were allowed to exist.
Yeah.
If you delve into the library, which by the way, just really quickly,
The library.
the library is probably one of my favorite aspects of the monastery, because you can sit in that library and you can read all the lore about this land, and
There's
it's
like 20
completely
books.
optional. If you're
Yeah.
completely just about the missions, you don't have to touch the library.
You'll never know.
If you want to do some world building
Well, you'll
and
know about the
and
other
some
stuff,
lore building, go read those books in the library, because I promise you're going to learn so much about about the character's lineage that you're at school with teaching, and
The
also
elites,
about
yeah.
the history of Fodlan. So
When they refer to the teachings all the time in dialogue, but they never fully explain it. You kind of need the books for that background. When they say Saros did this, and then you actually read about what Saros did, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
That opening scene. Can I go back to Saros and that opening scene?
please do, because
So that opening scene sold me on Three Houses when they first released that,
yeah.
and I was like, oh damn.
Yeah,
'Cause
no, they just flat out, yeah.
it was two armies in a canyon facing each other, and you have the character known as
Are
Saros.
you talking about the Tailtean Plains scene?
Is that the Telltale Plains?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have Saros on one side, which is the founder of the church, and then you have the nemesis kind of character on the other side, and they start charging each other, and then you start seeing explosions all around, and I'm like, okay, this is new.
But you see those red lights
And
too.
the red lights, and then the
those are the
swords light
10
up,
elites.
and you're like, what?
Yeah, and they're just showing how the 10 elites were capable of competing
Destroying people
with
in a single swing.
not even people, like factions of armies.
Yeah.
Like were just being taken out one by one as they were all engaging in battle with 10 people. Like, obviously, Nemesis had his
He had an
group.
army.
He had his army, but like these 10 people in and of themselves were such a big piece of that army that they were outnumbered, and they were still holding their own against each other. It just shows the strength level of some of these fabled individuals in their history.
Right.
But to get back on track with the church overstate is the founder of Dimitri's kingdom of Fargus, Lug, proved himself so worthy that Saros allowed him to create essentially his own country away from the church, with the contingency that the church was allowed as the main focal religion of the country. So they are the
that
Holy
was
Kingdom.
like, do your own thing, but don't step out of line. And
Yeah.
that was so basically the church has always been a fundamental hand in this country, and a lot of people kind of I've accepted it. Like it is such an underlining thing of the country. It's not even that big of a thing. Like it's not even oh yeah, the church faction. It's not like, no, the church. It's like, it's not even a faction. It's where I live.
Yeah, it's not even something you think about. Like, for them, everyday life involves the church.
Precisely. That's kind of why I like Claude's route. As soon as I picked him, though, he was kind of like, but isn't it kind of the land that gives us what we need, not the goddess? And everyone says, heresy. He's like, nah, I'm just joking, y'all.
Well, see, but that brings
and
the...
I'm like, oh, this is a serious problem. They
But
were
see,
about to...
we were talking about chapter 2 a second ago, where and this is the chapter before you meet the Death Knight for the first time, where Lord Lonato is essentially rebelling against the church.
Yes.
And she gives the students
the Rhea.
Rhea gives the students a mission where they're to help essentially suppress the ending
Kids, I know you've got
pieces.
homework this week, but can you totally just like skewer some like dudes on the weekend?
Yeah.
Just like
There are only some rebel leaders that are insubordinating against the church, but that it immediately, like, I played Black Eagles the first time through.
yeah.
It took Edelgard's main conflict in her story and brought it directly to the forefront almost immediately. It wasn't from the Imperial
It's
capital.
like, why does the church tell us what to do?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't from the Adrestrian Empire.
Yeah.
It was from the Holy Kingdom of Fergus. So it wasn't even about Edelgard's people, but it took that plight where Edelgard is thinking to herself, man, I hate how the church controls everything. And Saros is like, hey, we're totally not like that.
Go
But
do
also,
that.
I need you to go control some people that are rebelling against the church to show that it wouldn't be a wise idea to rebel against the church.
No, yeah.
And so it takes Edelgard's strong feelings, and because that was my first playthrough, it immediately shed a negative light on the church to me. I was instantly like, these people can't be trusted.
Yeah. Did you? Yeah. No. Do you ever see Rise of the Shield Hero?
I did, actually.
Religion, man.
Religion.
It works, but it kind of sucks.
It works, but it doesn't.
It's fun when a religion actually gives you power like a paladin, and it's like you're at the church, super army, mega awesomeness. Also, I get to throw a building on you.
Well, you can also see how...
But again, when you're talking about this, it rules everything. But I never got to actually see that in Three Houses. When they said the church is the domineering strength, all I ever saw of the church was Catherine, Shamir, and Aloise.
Alois.
I really kind of wanted to see, and of course, Gatekeeper.
Gatekeeper.
Who can forget Gatekeeper?
Gatekeeper for Smash.
Yes. They never really showed like, oh, and Rhea standing over literally like, here's all her followers. I would have really have liked to have seen like the follower scene, like the big, like it's the Vatican reference kind of thing where she's standing on a balcony and they're all looking up to her looking for her for answers.
Oh, absolutely. I think that would have been quite an indicative scene.
But Greg Ma always feels like it feels like someone forgot to open the front gate.
Yes. But you can tell that they did their due diligence on research in Fire Emblem as a series, because throughout history, their religion has been at the forefront of a lot of conflicts in like millennia ago type conflicts. And like they've essentially taken that feudal aspect of world history and just put it into a video game and added magic and made it more mythological. And they've really kind of taken this aspect of world. I just said that, but they've taken world history and they've shrunk it down into a game where you get to explore this world that they've created with this concept of what if not everyone believes what they want you to believe.
Yeah, it is a good aspect of that. Like Fire Emblem has always taken cultural like notes, and introduced them into the world that they want to build. But this one feels like the most like politically integrated and like
the politics in this game were incredibly.
I would say
at the forefront.
They were thought about. They were like, this is why this person's over here. This is why the boundaries are drawn. And over here, this is why they're like that. And this is why, for example, why is what's Dimitri's right hand man?
Are you talking about Lorenz? Oh,
like, why is Dedue with Dimitri?
Oh, you said Dimitri. I thought you said Claude.
Oh no,
okay.
Sorry. But like, why is Dedue with Dimitri? And that is actually explained in the history of the world.
They dig into those kinds of things, and like I said, I only made it through about half of the Blue Lions story, and without getting in too deep for it, before we really want to delve into it, Dimitri's story is tragic, and he's very representative of what living with PTSD must feel like.
Yeah, he is the quintessential what you would say, like, okay, so let's break it down. I think it's a good time to kind of break down let's see, maybe we can get into time skip now.
Time skip? If we want to jump into the spoiler territory, we can start delving right into that.
Let's see. I actually would like to, before we get into that, you're talking about the PTSD. How I would like to talk about how some of those characters that are shown talk about like some of the things in their lives. Like, can we talk about like Bernie and Marianne for a second?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can.
Also, Ingrid, maybe.
I would be down with that. Ingrid is one of my favorite characters, and I mean, it's going to sound awful, but since we're kind of starting to bridge that gap into spoiler territory, I'll talk about this.
Well, specifically these, because every person that I just mentioned is directly involved because of some political machination that has shaped who they are today in some tragic or a horrible way, especially Dimitri. So Dimitri's background is that his parents got wiped out by
his parents got murdered. Yeah.
bandits on the side of the road, or they basically, the wagon got attacked, and
It was an insurrection of sorts.
yeah,
And the royals were more or less wiped. Save him, of course.
yeah. He talks about how he was there, and
Yeah.
how he got to see his dad's head cut off.
Yeah, and he saw how it happened and more or less how it haunts him. It gives him headaches.
He also, yes, that is a common sign of PTS, and he also suffers major degrees of survivor's guilt, which is
Yeah.
you have both the PTSD, which is you never forget that it is a moment that replays in your head constantly. There is never a moment you're not basically breathing that moment,
Yeah.
as well as the guilt of being powerless in that situation, which kind of is his whole driving force.
But we can bridge this into Ingrid's
Yes.
backstory as well, because Ingrid, at the age of 13, was betrothed to a man named Glenn. And Glenn, during this insurrection, was killed. So she was widowed at the age of 13.
I mean,
She wasn't actually married per se,
but I mean, considering the other possibility where she had to give up her life to be married, I think this was the best result.
oh, well,
But basically, after that, they then tried to keep remarrying her,
off to different suitable bachelors.
and it wasn't a question of, oh, we did that didn't work. It's, okay, let's try again. And it was merely a delay for what was, she thought, her inevitable end, even though she pushed for a different outcome.
But the thing about Ingrid is that she kept her nose down and kept trying, like, allowed the tries to continue happening. She allowed her parents to keep trying
So that she could do her thing.
Well, yeah, it's her family. Her family name. They ran out of money.
Yes.
I think that
That's another thing. This is a fantasy story where a problem for a family is they ran out of money.
Yeah.
That is,
it's shocking. They I believe that
because it's usually like,
House Daphne fell out of favor, and so her house is essentially going to be ceasing to exist, and it really builds up the plot line. If we want to drag Sylvain into this too, where
Sylvain is another character who is burdened by his blood. Fire Emblem has a big thing on genealogy,
absolutely,
as a word,
yeah.
but the role of nobility in the lands of Fire Emblem seems to differ.
A little bit.
Whereas there is a difference between the branded in Awakening and the what are they called? Crests.
The crests in Three Houses. Yeah.
They're essentially the same thing, but they're treated completely differently in the eyes of the people.
If we want to go back to like Fire Emblem 4, we've got Holy Blood. And Holy Blood is a system where particular characters are completely borked just because of the blood type that they have. It allows them to wield particular weapons and gives them particular affinities. And overall, certain characters, just with the Holy Blood feature, became some of the more powerful units in the game just because it allowed them. It was a literal matchmaking system where part 1 you played with the parents, and you spent part 1 pairing up the parents. And with different pairings, you could give different characters in Generation 2, part 2,
Yes.
different blood types, so they could wield different types of weapons and have different type of growths and stats.
Now, what you were actually talking about, and this is one of the most uncomfortable thing about Fire Emblems, is eugenics in a way.
In a way, that's kind of what,
And that's kind
OG
of what Three Houses is calling out.
Three Houses is in fact calling that out. They're saying the crests. It was the focal point of one of the first trailers they put out. The crests are to blame.
In this game, in Cornerstone and most Fire Emblem games, people with certain abilities usually have a symbol that is associated with their family or on their bodies. In the case of Chrom, he had it on his arm. It almost looks like a tattoo, but it's actually a thing he's born with. Mm-hmm. In Fire Emblem, it's just kind of like a power system.
It essentially is, and you can identify a crest that is
And it's called different things throughout
within
the
you
ones,
based on your blood, I believe.
Yeah.
So
So
if
blood
Hahnemann's
determines-
studies kind of identify that, like giving blood or hair, it's literally interwoven into your DNA.
yeah.
And so being able to identify those things from a young age. So characters such as Sylvain, who had a crest, he wasn't the oldest, so he didn't necessarily he didn't have what you would say a claim immediately to his family title.
Right.
But
His brother would have been, but then as soon as he was born,
his brother didn't have a crest.
right. So therefore, even though he is the firstborn, he is of a lesser priority.
Yeah.
So everything he was promised and training for is now going to Sylvain.
Essentially because something he wasn't born with was given to someone else, or someone else was born with, and so what they were intending to have was given to them.
It was a matter of circumstances. Also, I forget. I think it was Edelgard who actually mentions that about like a person shouldn't be determined by the quality of who they are, by the crest they bear, but by the people who they, how they act and how they treat one another.
Exactly. And to bring it back to Ingrid has a crest, and the reason that she's being married off is because those crests are so sought after. She can save her family line.
Debt also.
Well, and yeah, with a hefty dowry from a better well-off family by marrying for her crest.
The guy she's
to another
supposed to marry
family.
lives in a volcano?
No, that was the paralogue that she was involved in, where a eligible suitor with
Oh, different guy.
it's not that per se. It's the information was discovered in that area. They were going to be passing a message along, but they got intercepted by these guys.
Gotcha.
And so
Okay, I was wondering, like, we're just on some place and we just stopped at a volcano. What is going on?
No, it was the pass over to House Daphne. Based on Fodlan's geographical
I see that
landscape.
map. I really want to see the lava on that map too, because how much is that place covered in lava? Because
it
seems like a lot.
It's hot as hell. But House Daphne is located directly on near the border of where the Holy Kingdom of Fargus and the Leicester Alliance are. So it's right on that border. And so I believe one of the conflicts that got her house into trouble in the first place was they sided with one over the other in one of the more recent disputes. And so because of that, they fell out of favor with their alignment. And so that's why the money didn't really come in. Their land isn't really suitable for farming.
They're basically
and so
getting cut off.
They're slowly being cut off and dying. And so her marriage to a better off noble with the intent of siring a child with a crest is their family's only hope at regaining some wealth and not, going extinct.
Yeah. Well, Sylvain is the same way. He's like, oh yeah, when they find out I have a crest, it's like, I mean, he is a skirt chaser. But he's not
unequivocally.
He's not the fun kind. He's kind of like I just can't help myself. Literally, he can't help himself.
Yeah. But he's also a little cynical about it.
Yeah, he's like, with these women, they don't really love me, and I know that. They just, love me because I have a crest, and it's like, that's fine. I'm just looking for fun.
Their claim to fame would be siring a child that has a crest,
Precisely.
even if they don't have one, because he does.
Again, this is a game that feels like it could be played by a 10-year-old, but definitely covers themes that would totally be read in a history book.
And I mean, I know we're sticking a lot with Blue Lion's characters here, but Mercedes, once in her family, her mother was essentially tossed aside by her father because once they provided a child with a suitable crest for their family line to continue, there was no more interest in Mercedes and her mother, who didn't have a crest of the same nature. It wasn't the same family,
I love everyone who has that backstory talking to Lorenz.
Oh, really?
I love every time Lorenz opens his mouth. It's just like, why, of course, it's because I'm a noble. And everyone's like, so you only associate with me because you have to?
Yeah. Well, see, it's funny, though, because Ferdinand is the same way, but in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
He's a noble because it's the noble thing to do. He like that came out wrong. Being a noble requires you to be
Nice,
noble in
yeah.
character. Like,
You have to be better than everyone because
Yeah.
it's expected of you. But because you behave better than everyone,
Yeah.
they think you're treating them poorly.
Yeah.
And that is both his case and Lorenz's case. But in the case of Lorenz, sometimes he'll just talk to someone and you could see their face doesn't actually animate this way, but you can feel in the voice actors, they just go deadpan. Oh, I see.
Yeah, no,
And Ferdinand, he just starts listing off houses because that's important to him.
it's
And-
etymology again.
Yeah.
It's back to eugenics. It's back to my bloodline goes back this far, but for him, serving the people, like being a noble of
No, they're
high
both- yeah,
class,
they're both good in that sense.
personality as well as important. Whereas with Lorenz, and Lorenz is a really interesting character to me, and I didn't really get to spend enough time with
he's
him.
a noble to a fault. He's
Yeah.
he's chivalrous to the degree that it's detrimental.
Yes, he kind of is built upon the toxicity that currently exists within the system of you have a crest you're in, you don't, you're out.
Yes.
So commoners such as Leone are super beneath him. You can even see that in their C support where Leone is asking him to help grease up the armor and take
Oh yeah, this is his
upkeep and
C.
maintenance
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
armor,
yeah.
and Lorenz is talking about how it's beneath him.
Yes.
But Leone thinks that because they're both students at the academy, your name doesn't really mean that much. They're both students. They're both trying to succeed in class and make a name for themselves once they graduate and exit the academy.
Right.
And so to Leone, your blood doesn't matter, but to Lorenz, his blood is what got him here.
Well, for everyone, and it seems like the majority of the people involved, whether it's your blood having a crest or not,
Yeah.
it is directly implicating how your life will be dictated. For example, even if we go to Ignatz, he's talking about, my parents want me to be a knight because they sent me here, and that is the expectation. Or Lynn Cynthia, I just need to make up for my family. I just need to do as much as I can and kind of, make my name, the family name, bring back honor to it. And
Honestly, though, with Lazithia's story, her the stories you learn through her supports,
yeah,
why she has 2 crests instead of 1,
yes,
is truly heartbreaking and really is, I think, one of the high points of storytelling with regards to how diluted people's perceptions of how important crests are in this world are.
But the thing is, and this is the really weird thing of Fire Emblem, it works. When
does.
someone has a crest, they are more powerful. That doesn't mean you should, pine after the crests, but because the power system is pinnacle and people are so influential in history because of their crests, and I think we should talk about why the crests are so important to a degree, is because it was chosen that those families would lead.
Exactly. And the saying is 2 heads are better than 1. But if you really think about it, if we all had 2 heads, it's another mouth to feed. It's hard to coordinate those kinds of things. And honestly, I don't necessarily know how it would impact you in the long run. And they really
Having 2
explore
heads?
that having 2 heads. Exactly.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But now take that into consideration. 2 crests are better than 1. With Lazithia, in Lazithia's instance, and
She is the most powerful mage in the game.
her magic growth is beyond compare.
Yeah. It's
she's-
really hard to argue with results.
she's
but you're
definitely-
just don't.
But most of her builds are going to revolve around her nuking characters, where essentially, in fact, the first time that you encounter the Death Knight, one of your main goals should be to get Lazithia up to B rank tomes.
Because magic is effective against heavy armor.
It's specifically a spell that she gets against the Dark Knight that's really helpful. It's called Dark Spikes. And Dark Spikes...
that one, yes. That's a fun
Dark
one.
Spikes, if you hit him with a gambit,
Yeah.
I hit that. If you hit him with a gambit first to kind of lower some of his stats a little bit, and then you hit him with Dark Spikes, you more or less can defeat him in 2 hits.
Nice.
And that's to assume that her magic growth hasn't already grown beyond control. And she already just one-shots him anyway.
Yeah.
So it goes to show that, yeah, these crests make her very powerful, but her backstory, her supports go into like the cost that it came at.
Yes. At which point I think we should start. We should really. This will be the signaling for kind of like what makes that fact.
Oh yeah, and do we want to start delving into spoiler territory at this point? Because
I would like to do one more thing to cover, and that is the three big things, which were the generalizations of what did you really enjoy about Three Houses, what things didn't you like, and which do you think you wish were included.
with regard to the game, I really enjoyed the characters that they built. So people say that they have problems with the supports, and I would agree that a lot of them appear to be straight line. Like, you don't see a lot of character development and someone else's C support when you've just gotten through someone else's B support. They kind of appear to be like reverting back to old tendencies in those old C supports. But I also feel like once you get through those C supports in each of these characters, you really get to start seeing different developments in different areas for different characters, depending on who you're supporting with. And you get to really learn you get a fleshed out knowledge of each of these characters through their supports. And so I think that they do a really good job. Like, they give you a smaller cast than maybe we've gotten in the past with some of our other games because, second generation, so you get children. But in this case, you're not getting children. But they make up for that, and that all of these characters are really fleshed out, and the territories that they come from have a lot of detailed history.
They shrunk the recruitment pool, but increased the quality, basically.
Exactly. And that's not even to say that the pool that you can recruit from is small. Like, most of the maps that you're going to be on will only allow you to have 10 characters on the map at a time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to recruit beyond your house in more than a couple different instances.
We get like 8-9 characters each house, but you can
and you're a mandatory deployment as well. So it's never... It isn't necessarily something where you're going to be able to, if you recruit 4 extra characters, you're really not going to be able to use all 4 of them on the map that you're playing. Some of them are going to be adjutants that you'll be essentially assigning to different characters that are going to be on the map. But the thing is they make that so you can... They make it that way so you can really delve into why these characters are the ones that they put in the game. Like, what makes them them? What really is an area they need to develop in? How are they going to get there?
I mean, that and husbandos and waifus.
Well, it's not as apparent in this game as it was in the previous 2 installments that they put in for Fates and Awakening. Like, in those 2 games, waifu and husbando culture was prevalent. In this game, while matchmaking is kind of a thing, it's not the end. It's the end all be all.
We'll get there.
Not the means to an end of I want to make my children super hefty.
No, yeah, it's like the how do I make Morgan super kind of concept. No, it's it's not that. Like,
oh, really? Yeah.
Like get Morgan combined with like anyone with high defense, but focus someone else on focus Robin on high attack, and you just have an impenetrable moving fortress.
Oh yeah, but with supports in this games, you don't even get to S support until right before the last chapter.
But here's the thing: no one S supports except Byleth and another.
Yeah.
That is so different from the other games because you used to be matchmaker in the other one. It's like, oh, I really want this person to be with this person.
Here's the thing that
and
I didn't
Tharja
realize.
with Henry, and like, no, that's a dangerous combination. Don't do that.
Well, see, but here's the thing though, with the other characters, and this is something I didn't realize, is that once you A support with a character, the first A support that a character gets is going to be their partner at the end of the game.
So there is an epilogue that says who was with who at the end.
Yeah, they get their paired endings.
We got to talk about that ending, my dude.
Yeah.
You say this is not would you consider Fire Emblem a dating simulator, like a visual novel?
Fates I might have. Three Houses at least felt more politically charged.
It felt more politically
And
charged.
That's the thing too that I would say I really liked about this game was the story.
Okay,
I do
yeah.
really think I liked the story quite a bit. It really revolved around how three different kingdoms kind of always butting heads and really not agreeing and seeing eye to eye on certain things with
Three
an
completely
overarching
different ideologies.
completely different ideologies and how they handle themselves and conduct themselves in their countries compared to when they all, all these different ideologies meet at the church. And Garrick Mach Monastery really kind of gives you this melting pot of ideologies, thought processes,
Unless it's against the
characteristics.
church.
Unless it's against the church, then that gets stamped out like an ember.
Love the library, by the way. We've already mentioned library.
We've already mentioned the library.
There's that one book you open and it tells you the rules of the church, and it says, "Do what you must for the church. Love thy brethren in the church. If someone is against the church, eliminate them.
Oh, yeah.
But then also love those who give themselves over after they've been defeated." Like, so it was
Yeah.
like, if there's a book that says something bad about it, just burn it. And it's just like, don't even think
Yeah.
about it. It's just a problem.
There's actually a brief snippet where Seteth, you find out through dialogue with different characters that Seteth actually goes through the library for unapproved books and removes them.
Yes.
So essentially, it's like censorship.
It is censorship.
And so it's like I said, it's those little things where the story building is just
It's thought about.
it's thought about, it's well fleshed out. And if you take the time to read the dialogues, I know there's 240 hours of content through 3 different playthroughs, but like if you take the time to do so,
You'll
there's
appreciate it.
There's a lot to find. There's a lot to
It's almost like a
appreciate.
D&D campaign. Like
It's
a
almost
really,
like a D&D campaign.
yeah.
Yeah, like a dungeon master has very methodically planned out for every possible instance that you could explore in every nook and cranny. And you do so. And he's grateful that he planned for it.
Yes.
But what about you? What were some of your high points in this story?
Like you said, I really like the characters. I really like the quality of the characters. Like Raphael was a bit weak in my opinion because it was always food. Him and Ignatz was probably the best story they had together. But like Raphael, he unfortunately fell too far into his quirks of eating and getting strong. Maybe Marianne is, when he's with Marianne, I think that's kind of like the stories I want to see is like, oh, he's just literally a good-natured guy. But it always falls back to his underlining quirk rather than personality.
There were characters that were stronger than others. There were some one-note characters, which was unfortunately the recurring theme in
Bernie.
Fates.
Oh, Fates, yes.
I was going to say Fates, but well, Bernie is a little more forgivable in my eyes, and I know I'm going to get hate for this. And
Gonna get added.
And I'm going to agree.
Don't at me.
I am going to agree that all of her C supports were the exact same. But when you get to those B supports and she really gets to flesh out why she is the way she is, it is heartbreaking.
You saw the one with Ingrid, right?
I did.
She kicks down the door. My door!
Yep.
Why? I love how her room is like almost like her children, like her space is her own. But then she starts talking about like her past of like she's cooped up, and I think we could say like because her dad's an asshole.
We're not debating that. That is a fact.
She wasn't perfect, so he decided to tie her to a chair until she was, in a way.
Be the quiet, submissive wife that they would want you to be.
Because those are the best kind, I guess. Not me, I'm saying, but what he was thinking.
No,
because when Bernie talks about
the
her
father's
wife,
eyes.
when Bernie talks about her mother, it's like, oh, my father, but my mother is just like a servant. You just she should go. She's fine. Like, she's not. It sounds like she's not even involved in the politics. It sounds like she is someone who is just. Like Mercedes' mother was someone who was used.
Bernie's mother is essentially a piece of arm candy for her father because her father has things a very particular way and he won't have it any other way.
Yeah.
And so
when it comes down to it, she's just like, my dad. Oh no. She goes right to her room again. And you're like, oh, that sucks. And you're like, Bernie's quirks were funny when she runs away like from Felix. and she just goes like, yeah, she freaks out. Or when someone reads her stories and she just stops functioning.
Oh yeah.
You're like, haha, that's really funny. But there's a really serious reason why I shouldn't laugh at her.
And like each character definitely has those instances where they have like different, that they have more lighthearted supports and more serious supports. Like even with Raphael, if we want to talk about that, Raphael has a support with Lazithia, and he's calling himself Big Bro to her, and she's like losing her mind because it makes her feel small and insignificant. And that plays into her one note where she hates being treated like a child. But then it gets into the fact that Lazithia reminds Raphael of his little sister. And you get to really hear more about Raphael's family, and Lazithia learns to be a little more mature in that regard, and
Where
that
she shouldn't have a tantrum every time it
exactly.
gets called
And
small.
it wasn't something he was doing to demean her. It was a compliment because she reminded him of her sister.
Well, a lot of the C conversations are usually misunderstandings.
Absolutely.
Except Felix, where he's like, oh no, I'm in another support conversation. I don't want to be here. And he tries to get out of it as hard as possible. And they're like, hey, I want to talk to you. And he's just like, no.
Yeah, more or less. That's kind of how it goes.
Felix is, he's the best. It is unfortunate though that you can't explore everyone's social link, like, because sometimes they're locked out of the house. In their houses, you cannot.
There are 5 characters, I believe, that cannot be recruited to different houses.
Yes, the main leaders and their right hand people.
Hilda cannot be recruited in the Black Lions playthrough, but she can be recruited in the Blue.
Oh, that's
Lions.
surprising. Is that
the Black Eagles? No.
Is that because of her brother?
I believe so, but
Because one's totally counter to the other.
It's more. I'm not really sure what it is, but I'm thinking at this point we can get into some spoilers.
We got one more thing though. What do you wish was included in Three Houses? Because I have a theory that the game was actually rushed.
You feel I felt.
Yeah.
I felt the game.
Do you think
So
they had to
you
get
have to
it
bear in mind, I played the Black Eagles.
Yes.
And I played Edelgard's route the whole way through.
Yes.
So Edelgard was my main lady the whole way. And my thing that I wish that they had really done, and they're releasing a DLC pack in a few weeks.
There is a week from now they'll be releasing DLC packs, so we're getting our thoughts in now so that when we make statements, we will be right and we will get in their face about it.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing. I feel they should have used some of the DLC as an opportunity to more fully flesh out the second half of Edelgard's story. It felt very rushed.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot less story development than I was hoping for. There were no cutscenes, unlike some of the other 2 routes that you could take.
Yeah,
the 3 routes
all
you could take.
the other 2 routes have cutscenes at 2 very pinnacle moments, and Edelgard's, which is probably the most climactic of decisions to make, does not have either of those.
Yeah.
Or any replacements for it. Instead, it has a CG picture. And I am sorry about that. That was what you got.
No, I get...
Because the reintroduction is a really good scene for each house.
Yeah.
But for Edelgard, it's just like, oh,
yeah.
hi.
That's kind of the thing that I really wish had been done a little better. Because I'm not saying that the story was bad. Because I really liked the world that they built and the stories that were involved with that. But with the route that I picked, that would have been a route better suited for like a 3rd playthrough.
Yes.
Or a 4th playthrough.
Which is actually the order I took it in, which was Golden Deers, Blue Lions, and then Black Eagles, which I think was the best way to
I wish I had started
experience
with Blue Lions. Honestly, I wish I had started with Blue Lions.
Is one of my favorite stories, I'll be honest with you. Even though Claude is my favorite character, Blue Lions was the better story.
I think that Dimitri... The other thing that I don't like, and this is what I'll talk about now, is that of the 3 main lords, the route that you pick is the main lord's character development that you get.
It's their
You
arc.
don't get the character development for the other two. Like, you can see that Dimitri is slowly going insane as the first half school year goes on.
Okay, hold on. Spoilers. Okay, you're good to go.
Like, you can tell that Dimitri is slowly going insane as the first half of the school year goes on. But
He's losing himself to, once he was in his kingdom and he had this one thought, he now sees the whole world and all the problems in it, and it's starting to get to him.
exactly. And the issues that are arising that aren't being dealt with in a way that he wants to,
Which is
that,
immediate.
or I was going to say a problem being solved immediately, resulting in more problems, and he doesn't know how to handle that. And there's the Flame Emperor, and there's a lot of different things being kind of really all converging into one main point, and you can kind of see that in the other routes, him going that way, but you don't really get to see the full culmination of that. Because, like, you come back to him 5 years later, and he seems sane.
No.
No, okay. In my route, he's very much collected. He's very much...
In the Blue Lions one?
No. I'm talking about the Black Eagles
In the Black
playthrough.
Eagles, he's way saner. Like, he is way more chill, and that's because I
But
think...
that's what I'm saying. You're not getting that character development that you get
Yes.
if you had chosen his route.
Yes.
And, like, it's one of those things where he's consumed with revenge, but it's to the point that he's so calm and collected, it looks like he reverted back to his old self.
Yeah.
And-
Which is, well, because well, okay. So, how do I get around this? It's almost...
You said spoilers at this point.
I have said spoilers.
Talk the way you want
okay.
to.
So, one of the things I like to say. So you said one of the things you've told me before is that you really didn't like the fact that although there were choices, there was no real impact on the story, right?
In certain situations, yes.
So, for example, when there's the big ball where everyone's dancing, I would have liked to have had a choice of like who dances with whom. Right?
Like in the cutscene?
Like in the cutscene and all that stuff. But then you get to the point where like you hear singing and then Sothis is telling who's singing and you're like, I don't care. But you still get to go anyway because Sothis tells you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I was hoping that throughout this game, like you play it once and you got information from another one, you would be able to skirt your choices to affect other houses. So for example, if you told Dimitri to just chill more or maybe like talk about his problems or like, hey, Edelgard's over there. She seems pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you make enough of the right choices with Dimitri, he doesn't lose an eye.
Can you imagine if Claude actually... You meet them in the first chapter and they all hate each other, right? But can you imagine if everyone found out how chill Claude was?
Oh my god.
Like everyone would fall in love with Claude because he's just so chill.
Yeah, he doesn't take anything seriously. He's happy-go-lucky.
But you are pretty much stuck not as a mentor, but more of an observer in that case.
And the real issue is, and I've heard some people say this, and I think that it's kind of interesting. As the teacher, you're supposed to tell them the things they need to know so
Not
they
what they
can
wanna
learn,
hear, yeah.
not what they want to hear. But this game, in order to build your supports up with these characters so you can learn more about their backstories, you need to play to their egos.
So
You need to
this
play to
is-
what they want to hear.
This is the visual novel aspect. When you know something because you're more read than the person who wrote it, that's a really weird way of saying it. That's not what I meant. But what I mean is if you've, like, for example, someone said the best way is to, like, take revenge on someone, you can say, like, no, peace is the answer, or, like, sometimes justice needs to be done. You know which one they want to hear, but you know which one is better for them in the long run. So when I watch this movies, they specifically chose opinions counter to the person's viewpoint, but it didn't change that person's viewpoint, or it doesn't need to, but it didn't even have an effect on them. It just said, oh, now your value for your social link is down by 5.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it felt like. It didn't feel like when you play Edelgard, that is the only one where your choices actually matter.
A little bit, yeah.
Because it has that heartbeat moment for that this will drastically change the story. But that is the only campaign that has that.
You don't even get that if you don't talk to her before she visits Embar.
Okay, so
and the
yeah.
month before that. You don't even get that if you don't do that.
If you join Black Eagles, you have a choice to either go with Edelgard when she goes back to her home or stay, which will give you a decision for the things that are about to happen and give you the information you need. For example, she's going to become the emperor.
Yes.
And this is her, and the story is of her coronation and why she is getting coronated. And then you have that knowledge. Then there is another choice to which either you can be on Edelgard's side or the opposing side.
Or you can go to the church.
Yes. But in no other route do you get that. The church always, after the time skip succumbs, which is why I think it's so weird they said the church was so powerful, maybe because it had ruling over all the other states. But when they said the church was one of the most powerful forces in the nation, I didn't think it'd get overthrown in one siege.
That's kind of what I was saying when I said I wish that I'd gotten more from the Black Eagles route.
Yeah.
Because
when you're Black Eagles, you get everything.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I'm talking about. Like, you get there's a lot there.
You get a nation.
That's the route where you fight against the church. And when you come into the church, you know that there's something sketchy about Rhea, and you don't really know what when you play through the first time. But like, that's the route that you'd expect. Like, everything kind of comes together. That's the route you fight the church.
Yes.
You know, and all these other routes you get to keep, like Church of Saros, the Knights of Saros members. Like, Catherine won't join you in the Black Eagles
Because you're counter to their thing. Whereas if you're in Golden Deer or Blue Lions, if you've already recruited her, it is a passive thing. You're fighting the antagonist while the church is on its last legs.
I was expecting to use Flame in the part 2. Like, I was leveling her up and keeping her kosher with everything that I was doing.
You thought the glass cannon was getting...
I didn't quite realize that she was going to leave my party when I chose Edelgard over Rhea.
Oh yeah, that is the sad thing, that this was a hard lockout for certain characters.
I mean, I was grateful they gave me her equipment back.
Yeah, that's that. Yes, good game. Good game.
Yeah, thank you. But my
experience orbs. No.
Yeah, a little bit.
My Sarah shield.
I gave her an experience piece, and so that way she could, hold on to that
experience gem.
The experience gem, and she'd gain more experience. And she had that, and so I was like, "Oh God, please make sure I got that back," and I got it back.
Yeah, but you oppose them, and you have to fight the church, and that's a whole story on its own. But like, you are straight up the Galactic Empire.
Exactly, and so I was expecting a lot. And I didn't get that.
You didn't get it.
And I mean, that's one of those things where I'm complaining because I expected so much and I didn't get enough. Whereas in all these other routes, it sounds like you could expect more and you got more.
So if I remember this correctly, was Three Houses originally going to be a launch title for the Switch?
It was supposed to be released.
I thought the first announcement was in 2018 or 17.
The first announcement was made at the same time as Echoes. But there was no mention of the game again until the next E3 announcement, which then announced it for, I believe it was April or March. It might have been March or April. But the next announcement that we got after that, because we got no more news for another 6 months, and then we finally got another announcement which announced it for summer. And
in August, yeah.
We didn't really get a hard date, I think, until 2019, where they gave us that July date.
Oh, it was in July?
Pretty sure it was July. Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of those things where I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, wait a second. They had plans for it. And even though it still doesn't feel like it's done, I'm starting to think that the time date they put on it might have been some pressure from Smash Bros. This is just my theory.
Oh, really?
Because Byleth is the last character in the fighter pack, right?
Yeah.
They had to have known Byleth was going to be the pick. And that was 6. So the game was out for 6 months, but they knew ahead of time they've had to test that character for way before that.
Oh, yeah. It's been 6 months.
So they probably wanted to delay the game to put more in it. It feels like they had to get it out in time for the fighter pass.
Oh, no. And like I said, I really wish that they had used their DLC to flesh out Black Eagles more. I'm super excited for the Cindered Shadows.
So explain what you mean by that. When you mean DLC, you mean besides the sauna expansion? Do you mean besides the maid outfits and the
I sense your sarcasm?
Captain? Okay,
I don't appreciate it. I do, but honestly, it's.
But you're absolutely right. A DLC should be something that expands the game, not changes an aesthetic. That should be a free update. When they made that expansion pass, it really should have been you will get. Boom, 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 boom. Expanded story for Black Eagle campaign. Extended story for Blue Lions. Extended for, and just disguise it as them doing more work on the game.
They have added some free updates.
This is true.
They have They are, at the very least, adding more paralogs, I believe, more supports, which I know they're doing with the new characters.
Oh, you're talking about Cinder Shadows.
Yes, I know
Okay,
that they're
so-
doing these certain things, and so
Spoilers. Cinder Shadows is a 4th house
yeah,
in the 3 houses game.
yes, it's gonna be a 4th like demi house essentially.
It's the house that lived under the stairs.
It's essentially comprised of the rejects from the actual academy, and so you're gonna learn about those characters a little bit once you get into that. But
Dude, I can't handle it.
in Cindered Shadows, what's going to happen is it's like a prequel to the game. It's like it's almost like what I would consider to be an extension of the prologue, because you're going to be able to play. You have to start with a new game. That is the important piece here.
It starts with a new game so that you have access to it, because there's probably some like you said, element to the prologue. Like they get there and then someone said, I found a secret door.
Well, here's the thing though. This is a part of the game where you get to use all 3 lords.
That is okay. So here is another thing. You this is probably the pacifist run, as it were.
It's what if everybody got to work together?
What if
And-
everyone said, "Oh yeah, hierarchical system that's preordained by the church. Now we're just gonna."
And this isn't to
Clubhouse.
say this isn't to say that this is going to impact the rest of the story. This is to say you will get to play with these characters for an extended piece of time near the beginning of the game, as opposed to choosing your house, sticking with it.
So whereas I think it's going to be like the 4th house, like another route to play, you're thinking of more of like this is an extended time to train with the other house leaders, because before you had to choose a house before you actually.
This gives you more times with each character.
Ah, dang it!
This is what I think. It gives you more time with each of the leaders. It introduces these shadowed individuals. And I know this piece for a fact. You were set with 11 characters that you can recruit through these chapters. It's going to be the 3 house leaders, the 4 the 4 gray wolves, I think is what cindered wolves, gray wolves.
Those are some model looking dudes and
A
dudettes.
little bit, yeah.
Like
Happy may
wow.
or may not be my new favorite because
And
of
Raphael
her
is
aesthetic.
now irrelevant.
More or less, but yeah. To start again here, you get the 3 house leaders, the 4 gray wolves, and then you get 1 of each house alongside you. So I believe it's Hilda, Lindhart, and Ash from their respective houses, and those are the 11 you get to play with for the Cindered Shadows DLC area. So I know that, and so what I'm thinking is that during the beginning piece of this game, you get those 11 characters to play through the Cindered Shadows DLC.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Cindered Shadows DLC.
But you don't think that this is like a story expansion? This is just a character expansion.
This is a character expansion with their respective missions.
Because you know what happened with Fates, right?
Yeah.
Revelations.
I do.
Okay, you buy one of the 2 games. You get to the game is a full game, and it's almost like they split it in half. It should have been 1 game, and then they release a 3rd game that says, "Hey, you need to buy the DLC."
Yeah. I also bought the pre-release for that as well, where it came with all 3. So
okay.
Yeah. So I didn't
it-
actually have to. It was all in 1 cartridge. So
But-
technically for me, it was 1 game, but it was expensive.
But if they come out with a second pass for Fire Emblems and it's like expanded story plots, I'm going to be a little
The
miffed.
only one I would accept it for
Because
is the
they made
Black
a-
Eagle Route.
because they made a cutscene for Smash Bros.
Yeah.
They made a Fire Emblem 3 Houses cutscene, but Black Eagles doesn't get a cutscene.
That's what I'm saying. The only route that I would accept added story content for at this point is the Black Eagles.
Yeah.
What they're doing with Cindered Shadows is kind of what I expect. This is what I expect to happen. This is a whole little sphere of a world that can live and exist by itself, and it doesn't detract from the story, or it's not something you need to know about for the rest of the story to make sense. Because that's what they did in Fates with Revelations that really effed everything up.
Well, Revelations, from what I saw of it, it was very middle of the road. Pick who you choose from each side, and both sides, parts of them join you.
You get everybody.
Oh, you get
so
everyone.
everybody eventually joins. They didn't balance it well because you're getting a level 5 promoted unit with joining in the same chapter as a level 5 base unit.
No, but I think this was more of like fan fulfillment than it was for an actual balanced game. It was like, but I love both sides. And
why can't I have Xander and Ryoma?
Well, I mean, they do that in Fire Emblem Heroes, and they do that in the Warriors game, where they get pulled, and you just see what's his name, the blonde prince, Xander, and samurai guy. They're just staring at each other, and they're really miffed. But you're just like, hey, knock it off, you two. And they both look at you, and you're like, and they're just it's like they kill each other if they could, but they're not gonna.
No, for sure. And so like that's one of the things that like I don't want a DLC where they're adding a bunch of new story where it's like, well, this is going to answer 5 questions you might still have about the story.
I would have loved the story to have actually been like, where were they the whole time in the other campaigns? And it was like, you remember that earthquake in chapter 2? And you're like, they all literally
killed all of them.
They literally killed. I would have thought that would be so funny. Like, we're just on a mass grave of a lost log house.
I feel awful for laughing at that, but it's just so like, it's plausible.
Or if there was something at the bottom, and if we didn't show up, they would have died, for example.
Or maybe like they're the ones that fish you out of the schism that you fall into when you choose the church route.
Okay, so yeah, but can I please talk about that time skip?
Yeah, I feel it was done tastefully.
I feel like it was done enough. We need a time skip to happen, but we can't have progress made on the player, right?
Yeah.
This is like, so in manga and all that stuff, they do time skips now in all shonens because Dragon Ball Z did it, and now everyone does it in shonen. So everyone gets a 2-year skip where the power level has now been raised.
Okay.
Everyone's power has been raised. Everyone has come into them full selves, and if you've played your cards right, you've gotten to at least be with everyone you've recruited with.
More or less, yeah.
Majority of my game was those social aspects, and I was so stuck on tea time. but I'll never do tea time again. I spent way too much time in tea time getting the perfect tea time because I thought that was the most important part.
I mean, it raises charm.
Yes.
Charm is so important in this game.
It's the best way to recruit.
I mean, it's just charisma.
Yeah.
And like you can understand why someone like Lorenz doesn't have any.
But you fall into that hole. Your character Blythe falls into a hole after a big comeuppance at the church, right? Even though I thought the church was on a hill, not a cliff. But that's beside the point. You fall down, and apparently you're gone for 5 years.
You disappear,
and it needs to be explained to me in some way to either A, why isn't your hair longer? B, why are you not just a wild child now who's been stuck in a cave for 5 years? Like, I would have loved that, like, they're in a cave and you don't die because, okay, spoilers, Byleth can't die by normal means. So they had to dig their way... They had to dig their way out for 5 years, and they come out and they have this beard now. I would have loved that. Just minor Byleth.
You have a new class. You're a wildling.
Where were you for 5 years? I was literally buried under a pile of rocks. Where were you?
I haven't spoken English in 5 years.
Precisely. So it's one of those things where it's like your character doesn't receive any growth because you are experiencing the time shift. Although, you know what I mean?
No, I get that.
If Byleth was spirited away for,
I mean, in order to survive a fall like that, he would have had to.
Right, but can you imagine, like, I don't know. There's just an element of it where I'm like, either Byleth fell into another dimension, was stuck there for 5 years in some black pit, right? Which is an entirely possibility, but I'd love it if that was pointed out in some way. Or literally Byleth was falling for 5 years. Because they end up in the same river.
Dude, I'm afraid of heights. I can't even imagine falling for that long.
You're right. Cinders could be like, oh, we are the plot convenience. Like they were taking care of Byleth for those 5 years. That is entirely a possibility. And then it says, oh, they're healed. time to send him down the river.
Time to send him down the river.
Send him down the river. No, but it is one of those things where almost that aspect, I can start to see where the story starts to bend for the convenience of it. Like, I almost wish there was, this is really bad to say, but like maybe, I don't know, if they had started with Byleth being stuck on an island, right, with amnesia, old Byleth, and then they start to remember their time as a teacher, and then you start to learn that, and they remember everything, and then they've got to make their way, but it's been already 5 years. They've been living on this island or something. I don't know. I just want to see crazy Byleth with like long hair and like ragtag like things, and like because they walk in and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm."
So this is like a personal fantasy for you.
For me, this is a personal like storytelling aspect because there's nothing better than like the redemptive arc. You're at your lowest point, and your character should show that. And her lowest point was literally falling into a chasm.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, you kind of come back and it feels like nothing's changed.
Dimitri lost an eye.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, those are, I mean, and we talked about that earlier. Like, if your choices mattered a little bit, maybe you could make choices that would prevent Dimitri from losing his eye.
Which is like, just chill.
Yeah,
just
I think that'd be kind of cool.
That would have been great. Like, because that's not even a hard thing to do. The model already exists of him
not losing
an eye. So it's so easy to just implement that, and he can lose it later, like in the final battle or something, right? But there is a thing where if like you told him, don't go rushing into things, and maybe you know,
and you said that at an earlier chapter, like maybe it's something that he keeps with him, and like it gives you a double boost and your support points or something.
Like,
an eye for an eye.
Just say like an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. He was like, huh. Is that what they say now? And you're just like, I taught him something.
Yeah, because like 3 months later, then like when this big reveal happens, where we're in spoiler territory, so I'm gonna say it.
But let's say everyone's what the first introduction starting with Dimitri. You come back to McGreg Maw, and it is a massacre.
It is, yeah. It's pretty crazy. I mean, in Black Eagles, Edelgard already has control of Garreg Mach.
So. No cutscene. Everyone gets a cutscene. So in Claude's, you come back and you walk in. There's someone in the shadow, and he goes like, "Oh hey, Teach, been a while." And I'm like, "Ah!"
Well, I think everybody fangirled a little bit over Claude.
But I mean, like, he's just so suave. He goes like, "I was here because we made the promise 5 years ago," and I'm like, "Oh, you cheeky son of a gun!" And then
you remembered.
I want to do the Terminator handshake with him, where we both clench our fists and like bulge our muscles, but neither of us have muscles. Really.
But neither of us have muscles. It's because you're anime individuals.
Yeah, neither Blythe nor Claude are muscular individuals. And then you get to Dimitri, and he has just killed like 30 enemies, and he's all bloodied, and he's sitting in the corner in the shadow, and there is Blythe walking into the light, and they reach their hand out to Dimitri, which is a really good part for his character arc when it says, "When I reach my hand out, will you take it?"
Yeah.
And he's sitting there bleeding, dying from just killing 30 men, and he just looks up at you, and he's looked like he just saw a ghost.
Yeah.
And he's like, you just see this broken person, and he almost looks like a beast. And Felix calling him the boar makes sense, because that is a really great aspect. Is like, oh no, yeah,
yeah, you finally get to see it.
You finally get to see it.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm under Dimitri's. I'm a huge. I'm not a fan of the ideology, but I like understand it.
Dimitri's character development is some of my favorite character development I've ever seen in a Fire
understand
Emblem
completely
game.
Why he is the way he is, and even though it's not right, I understand justification, which is the most important part for creating a tragic character. Yeah. It's not just feel bad for me. It's like, oh, you are so broken, I want to help.
Well, it's like creating a villain, though. You don't create a villain without proper motivation. If creating the villain's motivation is because I'm evil, then it's like, well, yeah, of course, then fuck you, you know?
Right, this is Fates again. There's evil and there's good.
Yeah, and there's no real rhyme or reason for it. It's I'm evil because I'm evil. With Dimitri, it's I'm literally going insane and I need a friend.
I see the world so broken that I might as well just do everything I can to try and, even if it costs me my life, to make it what I think would be a better place. I need to take out the scum, is what he says. And he's a very Judge Dredd kind of character that plays as a judge and executioner. Mm-hmm. And he loses himself, and he's fine with losing himself. He realizes he's losing himself because for him, the end goal is all that matters.
And the thing is like, it's very clear to me that by choosing Dimitri's route, you are choosing to be that savior to his psyche through his story.
You are his
which
light.
is why I am so disappointed that in Edelgard's route, when you do when you do get to see those brief glimpses of Dimitri, you don't see him as this insane, crazed, revenge-stricken individual.
Well, he wouldn't be, because only Dimitri witnessed the truth in his route, which was the breaking point.
I mean, it's not to say that he wouldn't have figured out what had happened or who it was, who the Flame Emperor was after the reveal had happened, you know?
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, like, there is a cutscene where he breaks, and I love Three Houses because it did this. He literally breaks mentally, and then he just goes on a rampage and kills all these guards in front of him, and then a guy comes out and he's like, ah! And he just grabs the neck and crushes it with his bare hands. I'm like, damn! You hear the whole crunch and the gurgling, just like the opening with Nemesis and Saros, where she stabs him in the throat, and you hear him gurgling, and you're like, oh, like, stabbing is fine, right? It's just
the
that
game
sound
is
effect
gruesome.
over and over, but then you hear the, and I'm like, ha!
Yeah, no, they did a really good job with the cutscenes, which is again
It's powerful.
Why I would want DLC for the Black Eagles that just gives them, even if it just gives them those cutscenes, it would make it feel much more fulfilling.
Because again,
it made me feel like I chose the wrong route.
It does. Even though it is the most interesting, it should be the most interesting
because it's the most interesting. That's why I feel like it fell the most flat. I felt like it had the most to offer.
Do you think this is an indication of, again, time, or they just weren't aware of it? Like, did they do Black Eagles first, thinking like, oh, all routes are gonna be like this, but they realized they couldn't do the whole drastic decision thing and decided to make a much more focused?
I feel that Edelgard was somebody you were never supposed to be able to pick, but when they released their trailer, they realized that Edelgard was getting so much hype from the fan base because she was the only lord that they focused on. Like, how cool! Like,
okay,
like how weird would it have been where your main lord that you focused on in your trailer is like the lord that betrays you, and so everybody chooses that, and then that's the lord you don't even get.
So I truly believe Claude was not supposed to be in the grouping.
Really?
I believe it was supposed to be Edelgard, Dimitri, and the church. And it was going to be the three thrones. And it was going to be the idea of the empire, a loose group of city-states, which would have been Dimitri's, which eventually became what's it called? Lannister Alliance? Leicester Alliance. And then the
You're thinking
church.
Game of Thrones.
And then you would have to take three routes, which would eventually lead you to one of the thrones. And it was either going to be you working towards a union, a conquest, or zealotry, or not zealotry, or like a new awakening, I would say.
Oh, that would have been interesting. So, like, if Claude's house had essentially been unaffiliated territories, where as you passed through and conquered, they would be recruitable, like they would join your army, like you could do in the old games, where if you saw an enemy on the map and they had a portrait, you could figure out if they would be recruitable or something.
Yes. And I thought, for example, when I originally saw Three Houses, my initial idea was, oh, we're going to get something that's going to be like a world campaign. Like, they're going to start expanding. But then the school aspect came into it. I'm like, okay, they could still do the world thing, because they mentioned the time skip. You would do the school stuff, recruit who you'd like, and then the map would open up. You would spend your first like 20 hours in the game training and working at this monastery, and then the world would come up, and it would become like a Shadow of War / Ubisoft game where you had to start capturing continents. Those would be your paralogs.
They spent so much time on Garreg Mach, and you could tell that.
I still wish it changed with the seasons, though.
I won't argue with that.
Okay.
But I'm going to take it one step further.
Yes.
In the second half of the game, when you start conquesting these new territories and start, fighting and extending your rule to like push back on your opponents, I wish that you weren't at Garreg Mach anymore.
Yes.
You need to be closer to the front lines in these instances. So why would you not move with the front line as it moves?
It should have been an encampment. And then, or
Yeah.
like something along those lines where it's like you got different kinds of encampments. Claude's would be like actually pitches and tenches. Dimitri's would be caravans and all that, and Edelgard's would be like a fort or like a point.
And like you could still have all the same features available to you, albeit spread out in different ways. Like maybe the in part 2, the camps could have a very similar feel to them where everything still is in the same locations. But like you could tell like they really wanted to incorporate Garreg Mach as this big focal point for each campaign route. So like in each campaign, Garreg Mach is your main headquarters, and that is where you always are. They make it work, but it took me out of it just a little bit, seeing that all this stuff was happening in the world, and I really wasn't getting to see it.
It's one of those things. But again, I think that's because the expectation they built into the world and then didn't show it. They just said it. Kind of was detrimental to their own success. Like,
And I mean, don't get
great
me
world, but I want to see it.
Don't get me wrong, though. Like, I do think that they did a really good job with portraying in the sky after the 5-year time skip that it was kind of muddied with war. It was this like darker yellow, like yellow clouded tint. It really felt wartimey, whereas it was much more optimistic spring with a lot of people passing through, and it felt more upbeat and
I would've liked
lively
some
in the
seasonal
first half.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I think the seasonal stuff would have attributed nicely. They did a good job making it feel like war after the 5-year time skip. But I do agree they could have added some flourishments in either new encampments or weather, and like
so
seasonal.
That was one of those things where I'm like, it's the winter and the ash wolves have returned. Meanwhile, it's sunny at Greg Ma, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, Garreg Mach is like,
Again, this is one of those things where I think it was a time crunch and they didn't have time to do all the animation, and they just skimmed by.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they had, they could.
Yeah.
If they want to in the future.
Yep. But thinking about recruitables, though, like I was talking about, if the Golden Deer had been unaffiliated and you could recruit them as you pass through their territories, yet kind of thing,
Yes.
yada yada. I think that's more or less something that's going to happen with the Cinder, like the Cinder
You
Shadows.
think you're going to meet them at the
characters.
school, and then as
You'll
the
meet
story
them at
progresses,
the school, and once you've finished that beginning of the story paralogs kind of thing, you will then be able to recruit them like you can recruit other students from the house in the houses in the first half of the game. You need to meet specific thresholds for them to leave the underbelly of Garreg Mach, and they will then join your house.
I wonder
They
if
don't immediately join. I
Can
think
you
that they will.
imagine if they got their own cutscene after the time skip?
Yeah.
You would be like Black Eagle still Black Eagle. I can't get past this. Blythe just walks into the room and Edelgard is talking to herself, and it's the in-game cutscenes.
Yeah.
And her sprite just does a complete 180 and not even like a good animation. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh,
Hi.
okay.
Yeah. It would have even been better if it were Hubert.
Yeah. You think?
I think it would have been even better where it's like you're walking around looking around and then suddenly a face shows up behind you. It's like, I didn't know if you would come, but my mistress wanted to make sure. And you're just like, okay, Hubert.
You made Hubert sound 10 times more creepy than he was.
He's Snape and Hannibal in my head. Like he's got his own thing going on.
He's got the tongue that kind of like arc reaches up and like touches his own eyeball kind of thing.
He's like a reptile, yeah. But as you say, things progress, and I kind of lost track where we were with that whole.
We've definitely gone off on a tangent. It was kind of our spoiler talk has kind of evolved from like what we wish we could have gotten out of the game, more we could have gotten out of the game, and what we think about the DLC that's going to be coming out.
Well, one thing we did mention again with the choices, going back to that, you remember how you have to capture the bridge?
Yeah.
In the Golden Deers, you don't have a choice, but in Dimitri's, you absolutely have a choice. In Dimitri's route, you have a say, go capture the kingdom or go capture the bridge. And he's like, well, the bridge will get us to the Empire faster. That's what we're doing. And they're like, but your people over there. And he's like, no, that's what we're doing. And so you end up, and then as you're about to do it, he goes like, whatever you decide, a messenger comes in and says, the kingdom needs you. Oh, I guess we're going to the kingdom then. Yeah. It would have been so much more interesting if you could have planned your campaign.
Yeah.
I would have really liked that. Like, do you want to go through the mountains, which is a lot harder for horse units? Or would you rather go through the lowlands, which is really hard for armor units because it's marshy? Like that kind of thinking.
And here's the thing, because of the class diversity in the game where you could make yourself a Pegasus Knight, and you could also make yourself an Armor Knight, or you could make yourself a cavalry unit.
But you can't make yourself an armored Pegasus Knight.
DLC, baby.
Oh, I love that. One of the I love the flexibility of the classes in this game.
But the thing is like you could plan for these kinds of things. You could say like, oh, well then in that case, maybe I should train up my horse riding rank so I could be a cavalry unit when we go down into the Plainslands. Whereas in the mountains, like, oh, I could be an armored unit instead, so I could train up my armor ranks on my characters.
And you'd have the whole month to prep for it.
That's
very Persona-like.
I mean, yes, but
if you remember like how the months are breaking out, you have a dungeon at the end of the month. Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of dungeon is it? This? Okay, I'm going to start training these units.
But here's the thing, though. That type of time commitment would have meant that we don't get 3 houses probably until July of this year, as opposed to July of last year.
But that is why I'm asking, if this was a possibility, if they had more planned, I'm not talking about Cinder Wolves, but mechanically on what's already there, just polishing, quality of life changes. Would you if they waited another year, do you think they could have pulled that off?
I think they could have if they had more time to do so. But I'm not expecting that from 3 houses anymore. What we got with 3 houses was great. What we got with 3 houses, I'm fine with what we did get. I've accepted it. I'm excited for the DLC. I'm fully accepting that I'm not getting any more for Black Eagles, even though I feel like Black Eagles could have benefited from more.
You would be surprised how big patch notes can come out for games nowadays. Like Kingdom Hearts got another 2 hours of cutscenes in a free update.
I wouldn't doubt that they do this, but I'm already looking to the new Fire Emblem game. They haven't announced any.
I'm sorry, what?
They haven't announced a new Fire Emblem game. No.
You're looking to future Untitled projects.
If they were to make a new Fire Emblem game, this is what I would expect. When they say your choices matter, I'd expect them to really freaking matter. Like, more so than, like, you choose your house and then boom, you're done.
Yeah,
you know? Like, the choice that you provided, for instance. Would you like to go across the plains, which is a more roundabout route, but it's easier? Or would you like to go through the mountains, which is more of a difficulty spike, but it's a shorter route to the kingdom?
And that's a really easy thing, but it still gives you the sense of choice.
It's not only that it gives you the sense of choice, it gives you a choice. You would essentially be choosing, do I want to fight on this map, or do I want to fight on this map? Do I want to extend my playtime by choosing the plains and having a more roundabout attack? Or do I want to do a surprise route where I cut 2 chapters out of my story, and it's really hard for this chapter, but I'm benefiting myself in the long run, and I have less chance of dying. So it's those kinds of choices where you're thinking about. You're actually planning an army, because they've already taken that next step. They've already redeemed fates for how they did with 3 houses.
Yes.
You got your route split that you picked at the beginning, and you followed through with the story. They did that. That's great. Now, take it one step further. Build on your plot choice and your story route that you've chosen, your story branch that you've chosen, and now give yourself additional choices. Really take it too far in that direction. Give us so many choices that we're sick of making choices. And then realize that that's what war is about. It's making decisions.
Yes.
Don't let the avatar say, "Oh, well, we're going to do this, and it's like, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. What about this? Well, I've already thought of that, and that's because this. I'm a master tactician." Make it to where you're making the tactical choices. Do you want to go across the plains? Do you want to ford the river?
Yeah,
do you want to conquer the bridge? Do you want to go over the mountains?
Yeah.
Those kinds of choices. It's really important decisions.
It's the next natural escalation.
Yeah. And you meet different characters depending on which route you take. It's the same thing that they did in Fire Emblem 6, Fire Emblem 7. Leveling up particular characters got you access to different chapters when you got to a specific point in the game. At a specific point in the game, if your Pegasus riders were a higher level than your nomad units, you would go to the frozen north of Ilia as opposed to the Sakaean plains where the nomads are from. And you would get access to different characters and different legendary equipment based on those choices. They weren't choices that were laid out for you, but those are the kind of choices that I would hope and want to be available to me in a new game, where I can make these choices and equip myself in a particular way in order to gain access to different options and viabilities. I notice that you have a lot of horseback bow units. you would be well suited for an attack across the plains, or you have a lot of flyers. You would do really well in mountainous territory.
Yes.
You know, those kinds of things. And so I want them to take it too far in that direction. I want them to give us a game next game. I'm fine with Three Houses. I love Three Houses.
Yes.
If I want my idyllic game where they say my choices matter and they really matter, that's what I need from them. I get to choose my army. I get to choose who lives, who dies. They already do that here, but taking it to the extreme. These are unaffiliated individuals. I get to build my army that way, like I do with the old game. It's a mashup of old and new.
Right.
Those kinds. That's kind of what I'm thinking of in the future of Fire Emblem, and I'm very optimistic too. I think that's something they can do.
You think they can implement something like that though, too, that won't alienate I don't know who's the demographic they're trying to reach anymore. It seems like internally they're very split on where they want to take Fire Emblem.
They were very invested over these last few games of bringing in a new audience as well. They've been very focused on sales.
Yes.
Something that's been left behind. And
it's like lightning in a bottle in the case of Fire Emblem. Like, it seemed like that first game really hit it off. I mean, the first game you talked about with Marth.
Yeah.
And then Awakening was another lightning in a bottle, and they seem to keep doing that. And again, with Three Houses, that feels like a lightning in a bottle.
They established a norm with themselves over their first few games, and their game sales over the last few essentially began to decline. So they did a remake of Fire Emblem 1, Fire Emblem 11, Shadow Dragon.
Yes.
So Fire Emblem 11 Shadow Dragon.
Playing on your channel at Frank.
I am playing that on my channel at the moment.
Okay. Yes.
Please subscribe to me if you're interested in that kind of content. But
below.
Anyway, so they did a remake of Fire Emblem 11 and it flopped a little bit, and when they released it globally.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a remake of the sequel to that game, but they didn't release that one worldwide. They released it in Asia. So, China, Japan. I don't remember which country they released it in, but they released it in one specific country, and they did not release it worldwide. So nobody got access to that game unless you have like an emulator with a translator patch.
Yes.
So,
such as how a lot of games go.
yeah,
in
but
Japan.
that's like old school Fire Emblem. They knew they needed to kick up the system.
Mm-hmm.
They did that with Awakening by adding the waifu simulator kind of stuff with their supports and their alternate timeline children.
The people, and this article came out just a few days ago, they don't know why Fire Emblem is so popular as it is in America. And everyone looked at them and it's like, Tharja.
It's Tharja.
It's Tharja.
It's Tharja. And yeah. But see, Awakening was good because it still kind of adhered a little bit to like old school Fire Emblem players because it was Fire Emblem.
Yes.
But they didn't realize that it was slowly evolving into more that direction. And so when Fates came out, a lot of the old school Fire Emblem players really detested it.
I think it's also just the gameplay has withstood the test of time.
Absolutely.
Like the tile based moving around, while with not just faceless units like you would with XCOM, but named characters, I think builds a more like interesting story and connection overall, which is it's almost like it took a JRPG and threw out all of the menuing system and just gave you a board.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. They've kept a system and they've added to it a little bit here and there where it needs it.
Yes, quality of life.
Quality of life changes per series release. But now they've gone to where they have this simulation, but the simulation isn't the forefront of the game anymore. You know?
Yeah.
You're not trying to make children where the children are super overpowered. Anymore. Like the last few games, that was a big piece of it. And
that was the shippers aspect of the game.
Yeah, and that was the big part of that system. So they can really, with what I suggested earlier, I'm not going to go on my rant again about choices mattering.
Yes.
But they could really
recorded for future posterity.
But they could really do themselves a lot of favors, and they could pay the ultimate tribute back to their old loyalist fan, like the most loyal fans,
As well as new fans.
as well as new fans, by evolving the system, by taking what was old and making it new.
Yeah.
So those old system mechanics
Expand.
of if you leveled up your nomads more than your Pegasus Knights, you get access to these.
I like the idea,
And-
though, if like your Pegasus units are like of a higher level, like maybe they arrive as reinforcements quicker
Yeah, or
because their
something
speed
like
is
that.
upped or whatever.
Exactly. And
Numbers playing a major role into the outcome of stories.
yeah, and obviously that puts
Time, basically, it's time in, time out. Anyway,
yeah,
yes.
but it puts that puts a big burden on the programmers because that's something that they have to take into mind. They have to think of all these things to kind of think of the mechanics and like the storytellers and all that kind of things, you know? But I think that that's the kind of time you put into a game where the game is a legacy. Like
Yeah.
those kinds of games where that type of work and thought is put into them they're legendary. Like those are the kinds of games where that type of hard work, it pays off. And
Yes.
it will pay off if they do something like that.
I wonder if there's a correlation though with it, where the older Fire Emblems were, from what I can tell, much more of the numbers. There was a layer of like D&D and fantasy over it, but it was very much more of a calculations and numbers game.
It was, yeah. And I wouldn't
So-
say that this game isn't, but I
But
do know that
how
that
those
old game,
reflect on your playing experience was the focus.
the old games was largely focused around tactics because back then, you know, technology wasn't as advanced as it is today, so it's not so much of a scenic overview. You're
But
not
do you
necessarily.
think it's almost gotten buried because of how advanced technology is now? Do you think there's a correlation? Not
That's,
even like that. Do you think like because it takes so long to make someone's model rather than a sprite, that they spend less time thinking about like, well, it would be really interesting if we could try this.
I know that games nowadays can really be picked apart for their graphics.
Yeah.
And I know that back in the old days, like it was a testament if you could get a game to run with a functioning story.
Yes.
And the tactics were in fact the forefront because it was a concept of a game.
You had
So-
to prove your
You had
premise.
to prove that the concept was a feasible concept, that your system worked. And that's what Fire Emblem did. So it's kind of one of those things that, I mean, it kind of works out that way. I do think that sometimes the technological aspect can muddy the waters on what can be perceived as a really good game. And I think that this was a really good game.
Yeah. I think there was a lot that it brought to the table. I think it got rid of the triangle. Well, that's one thing I liked, and instead
The weapon
inclu-
triangle?
introduced skills. I think that was a nice change, personally. Just making it I mean, it's not making it more complex, but it is more. Winged is still weak against arrow, of course,
Oh, yeah. They had their basic concepts in there for sure.
because that makes sense. But like, you would have it's much more effective to have Hilda with a hammer than an axe when she's facing another armored unit, because you're bludgeoning instead of cutting, which is a D&D mechanic, and it's just nice to see that aspect being played. I don't know if they did that in the previous ones. It just may just be more obvious in Three Houses for me to see.
I just
big
want to
green
see.
numbers.
I just want to see Hilda running across the battlefield, chasing down knights with a can opener.
Yeah, it's a really good image.
Yeah, she's got S rank and axes, which means she gets access to the legendary can opener weapon. So it'll be perfect.
It's a relic.
Yeah, it's a relic. Of course it is. The can opener of Goneril.
Oh man, I feel like it's nice with Fire Emblem that you can refer to a unit by their name and not just the axe guy or.
Yeah, I
someone.
mean,
I think that's Fire Emblem's strongest selling point, in
mean-
my opinion, are the characters.
they have about 600 characters too. I think.
They have enough in Smash Bros. Don't encourage them. Yeah.
Can't make any promises.
Okay.
I'm one of those people that prefers the Fire Emblem characters in Smash Bros. I think that they're all a lot of fun. They all a lot of them play the same with certain aspects, but they all have their intricacies.
I would have preferred Lynn if she was instead of
You know, I think they can remove one of the Fire Emblem Awakening characters and replace him with Lynn.
like Crom.
Yeah.
Bye, Crom.
Crom, Lucina. Robin, I feel, plays very uniquely, so I would be fine with him staying in the
Roy
game.
is fine. Robin is okay. When I say Fire Emblems, I mean the ones who are just swords and don't have a kit.
Like, Ike plays uniquely in a way.
Ike is unique, yeah. 'cause
Ike's
of the
pretty unique
range.
because of his he's one of the heftier guys.
Yes,
And so
heavy.
he's a slower sword unit. He's not one of the fast sword guys. Robin plays uniquely. Marth is the OG. You can't get rid of Marth when it comes to that because he's the blueprint of how the rest of the Fire Emblem characters work.
Yeah.
Lynn is a faster girl Marth.
Lynn isn't in it. Lucina.
That's what I meant to say. Oh no. See now I'm thinking.
We've gone on for too long. No, your credentials are at risk.
Remove my PhD from my wall. I don't deserve it.
All right, Hanneman.
No, but Lucina is just faster girl Marth. Roy is reskinned Marth, is red hair Marth. Crom is Marth.
I'm so fine with Blythe. Blythe's fine.
I'm grateful what they did with Byleth.
Blythe has a spear, which is all I really wanted. I just wanted some reach on those guys.
I also appreciate that she gets a hammer. Well, not a hammer, but an axe. But you know what I mean.
Which doesn't have any sharp edges, which is so weird.
And she has a bow.
This is true. She has a bow. Can you imagine if that's what Cindered Wolves is? It's literally the story of how Blythe becomes ultra powered by the power of all the relics.
I actually think that might be the Crest of Flames.
That has that ability. Yeah, that makes
it might
sense.
have that ability. Yeah, because that's the crest of the Creator Sword, and the Creator Sword kind of like gives him well, not the Creator Sword, but that crest kind of gives him access to use all the relic weapons.
So
it makes him the ultimate professor.
Blythe's crest allows them to use the Sword of the Creators, which is a unique weapon, but it is also theorized that they can use any other weapon in the game
with their crest,
effectively without negative consequences.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I actually think that most crest users can use all relic weapons if they have a crest. If you have a crest that is for that particular weapon.
It sounds like you can't activate their full potential, though, unless you have a coinciding crest.
Exactly. And so, like, for instance, Thunderbrand is the weapon of Charon's crest. And so if you have Charon's crest, you can use the ability unique to the Thunderbrand with that crest.
Which is thunder.
Which you do, if you don't have the crest of Charon, you could use Thunderbrand, but you can't use the Thunderbrand special ability.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's kind of how that works. So in theory, Byleth can in fact use all the weapons because he has a crest.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, that's getting into that at the very least.
Have crest always been a thing in Fire Emblem? Just as a quick question. I know brands were a thing in Awakening, and they were not mentioned in Fates at all, but it feels like...
they aren't a thing in all Fire Emblem games.
I know Ike's story with those is very interesting and is laid out.
The branded, and that's a little different because that's like
those are the ones who are chosen.
Well, yeah, and so the bloodline thing with crests is crests are unique to Three Houses, but then there's like Holy Blood, and that was from older games. That was from the fourth. And then there was, I think that might be about it. That's where like the blood typing essentially becomes important.
I'm so worried about talking about other aspects of Fire Emblem because I went on a deep dive this last weekend on where crests came from.
Yeah.
And it's like, we kind of skirted around the major plot points of Fire Emblem because I think it's best, even if this was a spoiler territory, you should discover that aspect for yourself. But there are clearly hints at one aspect to another, especially with the story of Sothis.
Yeah.
And I want to scream at the top of my lungs what I think and Indigo Children and all that stuff, but we're not going to get into it.
Oh, yeah.
But basically, the crests are not synonymous with Fire Emblem, but they are one of the major mechanics that it's used in the past. Like, was it in the original, the crests and the brands?
You mean Fire Emblem, the first Fire Emblem?
The first Fire Emblem with Mirth.
No. There was the Fire Emblem. The Fire Emblem was much more of a pivotal piece in that
It's
game.
like the shield. It's like the sword.
It
is
is
like the thing.
It is the emblem. Like,
yes.
You get that. I'm playing through Fire Emblem 11 right now.
And the gems.
Exactly. And so I'm playing through Fire Emblem 11 right now. Subscribe to Frank. And you get the Fire Emblem in Chapter 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's a representative from Princess Nina to Marth.
What is it precisely? Is it a object or is it a device? Like, is it a plot device?
It's
Here's the thing,
It's
you
a
can't
little bit of
open it.
both.
It's the emblem.
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So Marth holds on to it in his inventory from that point onward.
Okay.
It enables him to open chests. It's essentially like a sign of goodwill, like, hey, I'm gonna open this treasure chest and I'm gonna use it for the greater good because I'm trying to defeat this shadow dragon.
Okay.
I know it's kind of weird.
Are
but
you telling me it's his FBI badge?
I need to commandeer this
Marth,
vehicle.
I need to take whatever in this chest to stop
Marth,
evil.
Leader of the Arcanine League. Leader of the Arcanine League.
It is literally the thing
I need to commandeer this treasure chest.
It is literally the thing that gets him through the door.
No, he can't open doors with it.
No, but I mean, like,
He opens treasure
is it the
chests.
thing that progresses the plot? Or is
No.
it him going around and he just has it?
He just has it.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
but
the
it's-
difference
it's a-
between a
it's a
plot
sign-
device
it-
and a thing you have.
It is a plot device and a thing you have. In that a plot device, in that it is given to him by Princess Nina as you are the leader.
Right, but
you are the leader.
in Awakening, you have to go around and start collecting the gemstones for the shield.
No, that is a plot device.
That is a plot because
yeah,
that is what propels you through the story.
Yeah, this allows him into treasure chests.
Gotcha,
It's not like it's not a plot device in that aspect. It's a plot device in that it provides Princess Nina with the opportunity to give Prince Marth the reins.
Gotcha.
That is its main use in the story, and then he holds on to it. So that's kind of where that comes from. And then, like, it's referenced.
Is there a church in First Fire Emblem?
I mean, there are curates and sisters.
All right, that's not as
That's
not
air
as-
quotes.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
The healers, like, it's not necessarily a founded religion. They really focus on it more in Fire Emblem 2, which is also Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valencia.
Okay.
So
Oh,
that's
the remake.
That's
Yes.
the remake.
Okay.
And so religion is much more of a focal point in that game.
You saw where it was in the first one, and then the second one it escalates.
Yeah, because like I said, well, I didn't actually say this. Sorry. Fire Emblem 2 takes place in the same world, but there are two continents. Marth's dealio is happening on one, and Alms, who's from Fire Emblem 2, Fire Emblem Shadows of Valencia, yeah. And so he's on the other continent dealing with his stuff. And you'll actually notice, you can confirm that they're in the same world because the three Pegasus sisters, Pala, Katria, and Est, are in all three of the first games.
Also, a certain goddess.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can see that those lands are also then used in Fire Emblem Awakening. They go back to that world, but it's 1,000 years in the future.
Yes. Yeah, but that's all understandable. It's like I that's kind of what I really liked about Awakening was that, hey, here's all the other stuff you may have missed in the other Fire Emblem games and characters that are interesting, and I always like that aspect of Fire Emblem referencing itself.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the world building, I've been trying to wrap my head around certain things and what things are tied to others. Like spells always use tomes. The tomes seem to be all in the same like types of language. Like dark stuff is always dark, always does its thing. So whenever we were talking about, I think we were talking about the history of Fire Emblem and all the things that were involved. I would like to get into those who slither. Are they a thing like anywhere else?
Besides Golden Deer?
Okay, yeah. So Golden Deer is the only one who addresses those who slither, and everything else is just a side note. Golden Deer are the only ones who address
here's
it.
the thing.
They have missiles. There are missiles in Fire Emblem. They have
The javelins of light, you mean?
ballistic missiles. The same thing the U.S. government tried to do with Thor's hammer, which was a satellite that was going to drop tungsten beams because they weren't considered ammunition.
Yeah. No, so
What?
in Edelgard's route, they go into it, but they don't
No,
go into it.
They say there are those behind things, puppet masters, those who slither. Should we deal with them? No, that's later. First, the church.
Well, she explains it, though, by saying the Adrestrian Empire...
The dog is having
My
such a
dog's
fit.
going at the couch right now trying to figure out a comfortable
way to sit.
position to sit in.
But Hubert is the one who mentions the ones who slither, really. Edelgard addresses them directly, but
Here-
she does not.
Here's what she says about it, though. The Adrestrian Empire does not have the manpower to
Yes.
deal with the church and the Holy Kingdom of Fargus and the Leicester Alliance, because Edelgard's route is one of conquest.
Yes.
It is the route of conquest, which is, I'm not going to say that again. I wanted more from it. It's fine.
You're
Anyway,
getting into it. You're getting drawn into it. Okay.
Anyway, going away from that again, it's a route of conquest. And she, the Adrestrian Empire, does not have the might, the manpower, the amount of people that she needs.
She does not have the force.
Exactly. To deal with all three of these powers.
Right.
So, in order to get the manpower she needs, she accepts aid from those who slither.
Well, those who slither already were around, but she kind of figures it out and is like,
She doesn't figure it out. She was subject to their experiments
she
the
was-
same way Lazithia was. That's why
So,
she has two crests as
Lincentia
well.
and Edelgard are experimentations done by those who slither, which are, and this is it, the forerunners of Fodolin.
Yeah, they're really running things behind the scenes, which really kind of invalidates the power the church thinks they have.
Yeah, it kind of it's interesting as far as a plot point, but can I just say it really sucked to have every villain just die the very next scene?
They didn't spend enough time on those who slither.
Also, I stopped caring after a certain villain died, the Jester.
Oh, yeah?
Very particularly because that was a personal vendetta.
Yeah.
And that would have been a really great plot point to carry to the end of, are you doing this for revenge? Are you doing this for justice? Or are you doing those for your students? And it would have been a really interesting question if that character was still around to ask that question instead of just being like, oh, well, bleh.
Well, that's kind of the thing that I feel the second half of the game really failed to do, is really kind of drag out these conflicts with these particular characters. Like in the conquest route, in the conquest route for Black Eagles, you deal with the Leicester Alliance. Step 1 is you take the bridge. Step 2, you take the capital.
Yes.
Boom, Leicester Alliance dealt with. And then with the Kingdom of Fargus, it's essentially the same thing.
You're talking about the Black Eagle route, right?
I am talking about
Okay,
the Black Eagle
okay.
route. Yeah. And so with the Black, with the, and then the right after that is, oh, and now we're dealing with the Church of Saros because, surprise, we've been in Garreg the whole time. So she's holing up in
The Imperial City.
and the Holy Kingdom's
The Holy
capital.
Kingdom, yeah.
And so you, step 1, take out their main fortress. Step 2, take out Dimitri on the plains directly outside the city.
Yeah.
The Tailtean Plains.
Yes.
Ironically enough.
Well,
and
every place gets reused in each path, just at different times.
Exactly. And so, and then the final chapter is you fight in Fargus.
Yes.
In the Holy Kingdom's capital, and you fight her. There's no lead up. There's no build up. Like the Leicester Alliance should have had another 2 chapters.
Yes.
There could have been another 2 to 3 chapters at the end after you kill Saros, where you deal with those who slither.
Yes. Yeah. Rhea changes her name to Saros at that point.
Oh yeah. If you didn't
Because-
know, Rhea and Saros,
Yeah.
same person.
Yeah. But I would like to point out something to you from the Black Eagles route that I don't know if you noticed.
Really? Tell me.
When you're going around asking the people before the final battle, did you notice something about Raphael and Caspar?
Say that one more time.
Did you notice anything about Raphael and Caspar's dialogue when they talked?
No.
The ones who are less, I would say, like, the ones who are more instinctual seem to suggest that they've done all this before.
Really?
So this was something I listened to just today when I was rewatching Black Eagles. When you talk to Caspar and Raphael, they're like, ready to storm the Capitol. And they're like, whoa, deja vu. And I'm like, did they just hint at time travel? Like, did they just hint at, like, because Blythe's mechanic is time travel. And when the thing with Sothis happened, she said, now both sides of time are revealed to you. I'm like, is each playthrough Blythe rewinding to the beginning, trying to change things, Groundhog Daying it?
Oh.
5 years? Because when she said both front time, I thought initially like, oh, I'm going to get premonition now.
That's
I'm
so
gonna see
cool.
I'm going to see people ahead of time. But no, it now sounds like you are going to be able to see the flows of time and their variations and maybe affect them.
That's super cool. I never thought about it that way.
But it is only hinted at in the Black Eagle route.
When Caspar says,
let's go get the capitals. Wait,
whoa, deja vu.
did I say that before? I've never been to the capital before. And Raphael's the same way. He goes like, huh, I must be hungry. But it's like they're the only ones, the most instinctual ones feel like they've done all this before.
And it's because they have, maybe.
Perhaps.
Oh.
Now, I don't know if that's because the person who was recording it had done a new game plus, and that's a little hint they did, or if that is just something in the Black Eagle routes because something happened. Because in the other routes, you get messages from Sothis, but in Edelgard's, not so much.
Yeah.
So, again, I am surprised you did not get a premonition mechanic of seeing what was going to happen in the next immediate turn.
Huh.
But that's
kind of interesting.
Yeah. I that could be a hint at something larger that's going to happen.
It could possibly be. If they want to really milk out...
because Black Eagle needs an
Three
epilogue.
Houses. Yeah.
Black Eagle needs an epilogue.
Yeah.
It needs the Golden Deer ending.
Yeah, it needs to have the opportunity to take care of those who slither.
Yes.
Because it felt closer to Edelgard's story, honestly.
But it makes sense with Clyde because he's the one always searching for answers. Although it sucks that all the answers just fell into his lap rather than him be like, I deduced.
Yeah, him being intuitive.
And deduce is like, what? No, I'm kidding.
God. No! Chris, the puns!
It's great.
Yeah. Anyway, I do agree that there could have been more time taken in, like more chapters involved in that second chapter. But again, I'm happy with what we got.
Yes.
I do think it was a good game, and I look forward to the DLC.
Indeed. I will probably do a part 2 epilogue that sees what if the Cinder Shadows is what it's called.
Cinder Shadows, yeah.
If it covers anything major, we'll probably come back to it, but as of late, it probably won't be until like there's a major change to the story, because pretty much this is the game we've talked about.
Yeah.
This is the essential game. Like they can add stuff to extend the prologue and maybe I wouldn't call them plot holes, but add additional layers to a story point.
I mean, it could also be what you said. It could be a new story. It could add extra chapters at another point.
Okay, yes.
So we'll see.
But one more thing before we log out, we got to talk about that ending. I'm not talking about the final boss. I'm talking about what happens after the final boss. The proposals.
Ooh, the proposals.
So
the real waifu mechanic in this game.
So
it was a secret.
This is why I believe that the Fire Emblem is truly at odds with itself. The ending of the game is not victory. It is victory with marriage.
With a ring.
If it in my opinion, if a game ends with a CG of your waifu and your insert character's hands on it, you're an Otome game. You are a dating simulator. And it is unfortunate that it's not even animated, because then you can make an argument about it. No, it is literally whoever you're chosen to be is. It was Mercedes in my chance because, of course.
Yeah, okay.
I love, and you just get like, I've always loved you. And I'm like, is this the note we're ending on, considering the game began with the stabbing in the throat and it's ending with a marriage? Yeah. I'm in the personal opinion that a game shouldn't end with a marriage. It should be in the middle or the beginning. I think the marriage should have happened somewhere in the middle between the time skip.
Definitely after the time skip.
After the time skip, but because reasons.
Well, I mean,
dating students is, but beyond that,
the time skip is what makes dating your former students acceptable.
But it's still really weird, even though they're no longer your students. It's a little bit weird. It's just a little bit, but it's understandable because, again, you weren't really a teacher. What we talked about, you were someone to have tea with,
an academic advisor,
and so you can pretty much S rank anyone. I S ranked like 9 people, and I had my pick of.
They were falling over each other to get to me.
Tea time is very powerful.
Yeah,
it wasn't even by choice; it just happened.
It's not like even like Yeah.
Because they weren't going up past A, so I kept having tea with them. I'm like, I don't understand why they're not going past A. Time skip happens, and then it all catches up. I'm like, oh no, what have I done?
They're all in love with me now.
No. Because of T.
No,
But we need to.
I have a soft spot in my heart for Annette. She is just cute as a button.
Yes.
She's
a bit
sprightly.
of a ditz.
Yeah, she's just energetic and bubbly. Really, truly one of my favorites. And not even that, like, I found her story more intriguing than the others. It's just her personality and just who she was as a person was just beautiful to me. I thought that she was such a beautiful character that it was hard for me. I chose Edelgard as my wife at the end of the game.
The way you went into that, though, where it's like...
You weren't
Annette-
expecting that.
No, I wasn't. It was like Annette was my choice, but I married Edelgard.
I married Edelgard.
What? That's such a left turn.
Well, I figured that in the Blue Lions playthrough, I would marry Annette.
Okay, fine. But it's one of those things. So you fell in love with the character Annette, right?
Yeah.
Who'd you see at the Goddess Tower?
Who did I see at the Goddess Tower? I saw Edelgard.
Okay.
So I knew I was marrying Edelgard the whole
so you
time.
knew beforehand. So you're like, okay. So personally, I was like stuck between Felix, Claude, and Mercedes on my first playthrough, and I was like, well, Mercedes.
Wait, were you a
I was female. I was
you
I
were
was female Blythe.
Oh, so you okay?
Because
got
of
it.
Femme
I was
Chef,
about to say you can't do a gay support.
No, I know.
With Felix
That
or
is
Claude.
the most upsetting thing with Claude because it's like
Claude
it's,
very clearly gives off bisexual vibes, and it's totally
he's
chill.
very middle of the road. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's like, if you were gonna do it for someone, you should have done it for Claude.
They say that a lot with a lot of characters, and I mean ever since. But anyway,
Linhardt is the only actual male gay support that you can have at an S rank.
yeah, really.
Really?
I thought Eloise, no?
No, you can have Eloise too, but Eloise isn't a marriage.
Oh, so that's my question. Not all S ranks are marriages.
Yeah.
Because you can marry
Eloise
Sothis.
has a wife. Dude.
Oh! That's not a problem. That's not a problem.
I guess not.
Not in this time period.
No comment. So
I can't. But let's be clear. So I thought every S was a marriage, and then I saw that you could S rank Rhea. And the story of Blythe and Rhea.
So Rhea's supports are weird. You have to get
Are they? Considering
The
the context.
sass.
The context?
the sass.
Okay, why
No.
are they weird?
You have to get her B support before a particular chapter, or else you can't get it. And then sucks to suck, you don't get to support with Rhea anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a little tricky.
Does Blythe present the ring to Rhea? Because Blythe
believe
presents
so.
the ring to Sothis.
Yeah, I believe so. It is a marriage proposal. They love each other. So yeah.
I have questions.
Yeah.
So many questions. Okay, this is the true deeply spoilering stuff. Leave now. You have no choice but to get spoiled at this point. It's your own fault. Sothis is an alien. Technically. A dragon from another world.
Yeah.
Okay. Which means all the descendants of Sothis are star children. The special indigo children chosen at a certain time of month who have extraordinary abilities that lead humanity. In our mythos, humans' mythos, Earth's mythos. But in Sothos' mythos, it is also true, but they're beasts. By the way, they're the Chinese beasts, specifically, and the four that are left are the north, south, east, west beasts of mythology.
Yeah.
The turtle, the tiger,
Well,
the bird, and all that stuff. Because
Interestingly
wind
enough,
color and all that.
there's Saint Keyhole, there's Saint Setline,
Yes, all the saints.
and Saint Saros, and was there a fourth?
There was a fourth.
Was it Macule?
Yes.
Yeah, although I don't know what happened with Macule. I
Ran away.
Ran away.
Disappeared. Yeah.
Disappeared. Okay.
But
Oh.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I get it now.
So all those, but then the elites are made from the blood of.
Sorry.
Yeah, you do it. Yeah, you call it. He figured something out. But So basically, their blood is what fuels the crests.
Yeah.
Essentially. So when you are wielding a weapon, it is basically an artifact of those beasts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've now understand that this is all connected. And so when Rhea / Saros is hugging the sword after she gets it back from Nemesis, is she just like hugging her mom's like tailbone or backbone or vertebrae or something? Because as I understand it, when they die, they turn back into gems. Their bodies like decayed, but who they were in the gems. Basically meaning that's what a beast stone is.
Yeah.
A beast stone is the remnant of a primordial beast.
Yeah.
Okay. So wouldn't it have been amazing if Edelgard just grabbed a crest stone and like held it and she sprouted wings associated with her crest
And
becoming an ascended, like not who she became,
Well,
but like
no, but that was Rhea's dragon form, was the ascended one.
yes.
So like she could have become the next ascended one.
So Edelgard does become an ascended one for a time.
Oh, really?
Yes, but my question is, because they have the blood pumping in their thing, that's why they're able to activate the crest, because the crest is like, oh, I am alive, I activate. It's basically its mentality.
Well, that's kind of the thing that they hint at. That's kind of the thing that they hint at with
They're Steven Universe
Byleth.
gems, yeah.
With Byleth, he has the crest stone in his chest.
So Byleth is a hybrid of a crest stone and a human, basically making him a living relic.
And they joke about him not having a heartbeat for
But
the
a
entire
pulse,
game.
which is
Or
the
like, like a
energy.
pulse, yeah. He doesn't have a pulse. His heart doesn't beat. It's because the crest stone is what fuels his body.
So Sothis is a child of Naga, right? I'm jumping the track here. Okay, we're going back. So I had assumed Sothis was also a beast when I learned this, but we never see her beast form. She is always shown as the goddess, much like another goddess in a different Fire Emblem game.
Is that Naga?
Yes, but Naga was a dragon who chose that form after events.
So do you think that because Sothis is a star child, essentially,
Yes.
she's an alien, she's a star child, that she is the child of Naga who lives on a different plane of existence?
Yes.
And so
Because we have
that
proven in
would-
Fire Emblem, everything can be broken through dimensions.
So then this would link Marth's universe with the land of Fodlan. Albeit through a timeline where they are in different universes.
But this is how the Warriors games works, is like in Fire Emblem Heroes, they're pulled from their stories as like ethereal projections.
Mm-hmm.
In the Switch one, they're actually pulled out of their physical realms in a parallel realm where they didn't like finish their stories.
Huh.
Okay. Basically the moment they're pulled out, that story stops and that version of it never came to be. But the story that you played is a version where it did. So in this case, we are seeing an instance of what happens when a dragon ascends and it decides to do its own thing. Well, apparently it has children. Those children just start to find their own universes to exist in.
Not only to exist in, to kind of lord over in a way.
That's one of those things. I don't know how dragons are treated, but it seems like dragons are okay because most of them are like metallic dragons in D&D terms, and they're just opposed to counter forces. But I can imagine Sothis being like throw a tantrum at one point and accidentally shatter a mountain, and she'd just be like, "Oof!"
And then Rhea's sitting there like, "Be it the will of the goddess."
Yeah, exactly. She's very where art thou, brother kind of mentality. But it was meant to be. Rhea's gotta go. Rhea's gotta. It's such a problem in Black Eagles because she's so chill in the other ones. Mm-hmm. But then you realize, she just doesn't care.
No, in Black Eagles, you really do see that, like, I mean, besides that route, you see she has the potential to be a wrathful, spiteful god.
Yes.
She can be evil.
She has wrath. It is core to her being. Yeah. And everyone says in the campaign, I wish there was another way to do this. I'm like, there were 3 other ways, actually. There were 3 other ways. But with Rhea, no. She got to go.
Rhea's the way that she is.
If you play Cloud's route, you fight those who slither and you fight their final boss in their bunker, again, that shoots missiles with magic. They were an advanced race that used magic. That was basically technology. Oh Jesus, the door just opened like a ghost. Creepy. Yeah. And you kill them only to find out Nemesis gets resurrected, which really irritated me because I played Dimitri's right afterwards, where they said, "Hey Dimitri, when people die, they don't come back." And meanwhile, in Claude's round, Nemesis is breaking out of his coffin, going, "Seros." I'm like, okay, so they don't come back the same, but they do come back.
They come back, but yeah.
No one's ever really gone.
Something's different about you, Nemesis. Did you get a haircut?
But I dislike Nemesis being the final enemy of Claude's route because it wasn't personal.
I felt like it should have been the final enemy of Edelgard's route.
In Dimitri, they never touch on Slither of Darkness.
No. In Edelgard's route, I think it would have been great if they had dealt with those who slither and then dealt with Seros, because Seros was in fact her number one goal of eliminating. So
that was the most personal, yeah.
That did feel the most personal, but I do feel like she needed to deal with those who slither, because
they mentioned
it was stemming from the Adrestrian Empire.
Yes, and it's been corrupting the Empire ever since day one.
Yeah, exactly.
But all it is a little note, like, after they defeated them, Edelgard continued her silent war on those who slither.
Yeah.
And that's just a little title box.
That's all
I'm like,
you
let me
get.
play it.
Yeah, let me play through that.
Although I didn't play it, I watched it. But I'm just saying, they should have allowed.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, let us play that.
It would have been nice if they did, like, something. I don't know. It just feels like there should have been more to Edelgard. Maybe another time skip.
One's enough.
Come back in 5 years again? Okay. It just feels like the Millennium Festival. There was a lot of emphasis put on it. And so you're like, okay, this is a key point in the story. They come back, they do their war, but in Edelgard's, it feels unfinished. But it is the same time as all the other campaigns. Yeah. I think that's why it is shortened. Yeah. Everyone needed 6
I do
more
know
months.
that if you marry Edelgard, you do help her snuff out those who slither, and then you go off and live together happily ever after.
That's nice. Like she retires.
Yeah, but you
Does
don't
she give it to Hubert?
Again, you don't get to play that.
But when she said we're going to start distributing our manifesto, I got really concerned about that. Someone who chose Black Eagles. We will distribute our manifesto, and I'm like,
no. She's very much.
No, it's very much. The faith is fine. The church is bad, which is fine in my opinion, because that's how things should be viewed. Is if the faith is good but the organization is bad, you should be able to separate the two.
Yeah.
But when you say manifesto, was that the Japanese word?
When you say manifesto, I say detesto.
But yeah, it was very much like Edelgard's was the most bloodied.
Yeah.
Every picture of her you see her on fan art, there's always just a spot of blood on her face.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's reflective on her character. It's funny because that's pretty
that
much
sounds
Edelgard.
about right.
But she's also a broken person. She doesn't have any empathy.
No, she doesn't.
She doesn't understand.
Because of how she grew up too.
Yeah. Don't trust people. Don't ever trust people.
Yeah.
Because they'll betray you. Because her uncle, which actually wasn't her uncle, took everyone she loved from her father, all of her siblings. She had 9 siblings, and she was the last one left from the experimentation.
She was the only one that survived the experimentation, rather.
Mm-hmm. So, and that taught her not to trust anyone, ever.
Yep.
Nope. Don't talk to him.
When you think about it, her and Dimitri's backstories are similar in that they both dealt with those personal losses, but how it molded them was completely different.
Claude was just an outsider, and again, I feel like because of the cover art, I feel like he was a third element introduced, but probably my favorite, like, philosophical wise.
No, I think so too.
The world needs to open up, he says, and he did it.
The more I talk to you about it, the more I feel like you might be right. Although I will say that if Edelgard's route was really meant to be one of the routes that you could have played, they should have done a lot more along the lines of what they did with the other 3 routes.
Agreed.
And that they should have added cutscenes and what have you.
I just don't know. I have not played the church route, which you side with the church. I'd be interested to see if it suffers the same problem.
I already know that there's more cutscenes in the church route.
Really?
Because of the cutscene that happens right before the time skip.
Oh, really?
You don't get that.
Okay.
You don't get that. You get another picture. You get another picture in the Black Eagles.
But when you say you get more, what do you mean?
You get more cutscenes.
After that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
all the roots get cutscenes except for the Black Eagles. They get the final cutscene where you slay the dragon
weird.
with Edelgard. That's it. And that's because all roots get that.
But by the way, that's that.
Because like you say, you got a cutscene for reintroducing Dimitri and Claude. Like you don't get that with Edelgard.
Correct.
You already talked about that. It's just a picture. So, yeah.
It's although I will admit, like, I looked at the cutscene and there's like very sparse few, and I don't know if they reuse a lot of them. But when you go the Golden Deer route, you execute Edelgard
Yeah.
hard.
Oh.
You do. If you are the one who deals the final blow. If you don't, it's Claude. Where he's like, this sucks. And if you're willing to give up this path, you can join us. And she's like, no. And he's like, Pew! Basically.
Yeah.
But if you're Blythe, you're just like, I wish we could have. Shink! You're like, damn! Bye!
No remorse.
Like, and it's another thing with Edelgard. It's like, I wish there was another way. I'm like, prison's an option with a lot of those.
Well, I mean, with like, you kill Dimitri in Edelgard's route.
That's the point where she says, I wish there was another way. Because she's like, well, if they're going to lose, they should just give up. And I'm like, are you kidding
They just
me?
know they give you a black screen.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah.
Well, they give him where he's standing there and she's looking at him. There were so many cutscenes in Awakening.
Yeah.
Do you remember there was a cutscene for almost every single chapter? And those are good cutscenes. I don't know what happened, but the style of those cutscenes have changed. Yeah. But it's again, Three Houses is good, and I'm happy with what there is. But there is just something rough enough about it where I feel like I just wish there, like you said, there's more.
Yeah. And
Sign of
maybe
a good
we'll
game.
get some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sign of a good game. You want
Yes.
more.
We will see more in the future.
Yeah. And we'll talk about more in the future.
Indeed. All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Have a good night and enjoy.
Well, do you want to do like
Husbando's
a
Waifu.
sign out thing? Like,
Oh, yes.
if you liked the video, please like, comment,
Absolutely
subscribe.
not. Do what you're going to do. But yeah, go follow this guy's YouTube channel
Yeah,
at Frank.
It's just Frank, lowercase f. You can find me by typing Frank Fire Emblem into the YouTube search because currently I have 1 subscriber and
That's me.
9 videos. Yeah, it's Chris. You can find me by typing in Frank Fire Emblem. I'm doing an Iron Man run of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon currently on the hardest difficulty. I'd like to say that it's interesting. I hope that you would find it so. I'm doing this for me, but I really want to get myself started on some content that I think people would find interesting. So if you want to subscribe and give me some comments on some material that you think would be interesting to do, I'm not much of a video editor, but I'd be happy to do some playthroughs, some challenge modes or something. Let me know what you think. Go ahead and give me a subscription. Go ahead and give Chris here a subscription as well for this video if you liked it.
If you liked it.
Yeah, and leave him your comments on what you thought. Give him a like.
No, please don't. I get so nervous. Just if you liked it, share with your friends.
Yeah, pass it along to your friends. Like and share, and maybe subscribe to him as well for more of his future content.
I swear there's more on the way.
Eventually.
It hasn't had anything in months, but okay.
just give him your positivity.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you.
Also, Theorycraft if you do in the comments. I think that'd be cool.
Theorycraft is really cool. Actually, I'd really appreciate that if you drop some sick lore dumps and your thoughts on them.
If you listen to this the whole way through, first off, thank you for listening to us ramble. Second, give your thoughts on what you felt about Three Houses.
And how you're basically marrying yourself if you marry Sothis.
And then 3,
Self-love.
give us some of
Hashtag.
give us your craziest theory or your most plausible theory about something that necessarily isn't confirmed or denied in the game.
Like Dedue is Claude.
Dedue is what?
Dedue and Claude would be top ship.
Top ship, absolutely. I don't know if that's necessarily a theory
His
or just
lackadaisical attitude
canon.
with Dedue's very stern man, no nonsense.
Oh,
it would
absolutely.
It would be like The Odd Couple. It'd be perfect.
And it would give us another gay option that we've been asking for the entire time.
Yes. Indeed.
But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Bye. Or wait, how do Fire Emblem people sign off?
This is
Yeah! I've done my best.